What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is a story where Izuku had a harem in ROSARIO Vampire. Izuku Midoriya, the inheritor of One for All, and All Might, the world's #1 hero, watch as these two go undercover in a school that's meant for monsters. They will be torn down, they will be broken, but they will never give in to the face of villainy. Let's see how they cope with their situation, and a certain vampire girl that finds out their secret. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations, and support the amazing author, DylanTheArtist, for writing this story. Now, let's get into the story. Chapter 1. I'm not a monster, I'm a hero. Izuku Midoriya, on a mysterious bus. Location. Hi there, my name's Izuku Midoriya. I'm an upcoming hero given the chance from All Might himself, and right now I find myself in a strange situation with All Might sitting next to me. Flashback to 3 hours ago. As I was walking down the path towards the gate with my friends, Tenya Lida and Ochako Uraraka walking beside me, we were all talking about how our internships went with the pro heroes we chose. While Uraraka was, Tenya and I were just listening, once in a while giving out what we did with the pros, excluding Stain though, otherwise it was a normal day for us at UA. Young Midoriya is here, that is until a certain symbol of peace arrived with a dust cloud following him, in his publicized buff form. All Might, what are you doing here? I had asked, getting out of my stupor faster than my friends had. I'm sorry, young ones, but I need to talk with young Midoriya, All Might told them with his undaunting smile on his face. Sorry, but you can travel home together at a later date, he was telling them while he picked me up and started carrying me like a sack of potatoes, making me panic and embarrassed, and started to dash away in a hurry. Now watch as a hero leaves, like he's got somewhere to be. We'll see you tomorrow, Deku. Try not to take too long, Midoriya. I saw my friends say their goodbyes before waving me off and heading home. All Might, what's this all about? I asked my idol and mentor in a still embarrassed state. Where are you taking me? Try not to fret too much, my boy, he told me while still running back towards the entrance. All will be explained in due time, he tried to assure me, but doing so was a little difficult when you're being lugged around by the world's #1 hero. Cut to an hour later. After panicking for half the time All Might carried me around, we eventually found ourselves in the principal's office, standing in front of the small with All Might now in his true, skeletal, sickly-looking form. Why would the principal need to speak to me in All Might? When I asked him earlier, it seemed as if he didn't know that much himself, just what's going on right now, right as I was about to ask why we were both here. And seemingly reading my thoughts. You're both probably wondering why I called you both in here, the small principal stated with his paws entwined with his usual smile on his face. Now I understand the confusion, so I'll just make it short and simple, as your ride will be here momentarily. What he said had taken us aback. Hey, wait, what do you mean by our ride? My mentor had asked with his sunken eyes widened. Oh yes, well, it seems we have come across a tip that points us in the direction of a possible hideout for the League of Villains, the principal was explaining as he hopped out of his chair and started walking around his desk and towards us. And the source of that tip came exclusively from the facility I'm sending you both to. Okay, I understand why you'd send me, but why send young Midoriya? All Might didn't mean to sound rude, he was just stating why Nizu would knowingly send a student into a dangerous situation, and I couldn't help but silently agree. I mean, wouldn't sending in more pros helps us find that hideout? And young Midoriya is still in training, he doesn't even have a provisional license yet. I understand your concerns, but sending in too many pros all at once could alert the villains of our presence and jeopardize the operation. And the reason I'm sending Midoriya is that the place you're going to is a school, he stated with his easygoing smile still on his face. I was completely silent at the whole situation, unable to come up with answers as to why they need me to go to another school, and with villains there. I just don't understand any of this. Even if it's a school, All Might would be enough to handle the situation by himself, so why send me along too? I still don't understand what young Midoriya has to do with any of this. I don't see why he should have to risk his well-being for this when I could handle this myself. I could hear the clear worry in his voice and concern about me being in such a situation. The principal simply nodded his head in agreement. Yes, it does seem far-fetched, doesn't it? But my reasoning for this is quite clear, he, the small school figure, stated, crossing his arms behind his back. The fact of the matter is, sending one of our most important members to a place with unknown dangers would be quite troublesome. That, along with your weakness, we can't simply send you in alone. Yet if we send more than one pro hero at a time, then the villains will become suspicious, and severely limit our movement against them. As he was explaining everything, the pieces started to create a clear image, and since he's the only non-pro hero that knows about your situation and about One for All, the clear choice was Mr. Izuku Midoriya. Now it all made sense. At least somewhat. All Might was still apprehensive about the whole thing, but he relented. Alright, fine, but won't it seem suspicious if All Might suddenly appeared on school's grounds seemingly from nowhere? For the first time I spoke out, albeit very nervously. Why yeah, the whole plan seems a bit pointless if we get discovered off the get-go, I had bumbled out. I've already come up with a solution for that. He had pointed up in a manner that said it's already taken care of. You'll be attending this school as the substitute teacher and Mr. Izuku Midoriya will be in the classes you are a part of. What he said was worrying. I had learned about All Might's true name from Gran Torino at my internship. But that meant that he'd be defenseless if a villain were to launch a surprise attack. And if a villain tries to attack you, the headmaster of that place has cleared you both the full use of your power. You'll just have to lure them away from his students and staff. Well, at least we'll be able to protect ourselves, thankfully. Then the principal looked over at the clock near his desk. Well, it seems that you two should be heading off now. I'll inform the staff that you'll both be taking temporary leave. As he said this, another issue popped up in my head. Wait, what about my friends and classmates? I asked him, worrying how all my friends would react at our sudden disappearance. He simply smiled in his usual way. I've already made preparations for that. Now I don't know how long you'll both be gone. But let's just hope that it won't take too long, he told us without ever changing his expression. Now move along then, wouldn't want to keep your transportation waiting, he told us, waving us off. But then suddenly another thought came to mind that instantly made me panic. Whack. Wait, what about my mom? If she finds out about all this, she'll flip. I can't leave her without at least a simple explanation for why I didn't come home immediately after class. And I can't just leave her alone like that. She'd be very sad and disappointed that I didn't at least tell her that I'll be gone for a while. Even then, I don't think that Midoriya, she'll agree to any of this at all, let alone the fact that we don't even know where this place is. Midoriya. She'd at least want to know if the place we're staying at will supply us with a place to sleep. Speaking of which, we'll need to pack supplies if that's the case. Midoriya. I was suddenly shocked out of my own little panicked world by my teacher. He put his hands on my shoulders in an attempt to calm me down. Just calm down and stop freaking out, he said in an exasperated manner towards my lifelong habit. But my mom, she'll freak out about this, I told him in a slightly calmer tone. Oh, you won't have to worry about that, we've already covered everything with your mother. Of course, we excluded the minor details about the connection between you and All Might. At first she was extremely adamant, but once we told her that All Might would be by your side the whole time, she relented. But she made it clear that we let her know immediately if anything goes wrong, and we've already packed up all of your stuff for you and All Might. The small principal had managed to assure me of all my worries. Now I do believe that covers everything. I bid you both farewell and good luck. All Might just sighed in exasperation, but managed a weak smile. Alright then, are you ready, my boy? He had patted my shoulder lightly. I had also somehow managed a small, shaky smile, filled with nervousness. As ready as I'll ever be, I told him with focus and determination filled in my eyes, which seemed to make his smile grow more with pride. End of flashback. And that's how we found ourselves in this predicament, with me in a new uniform that was a green that was slightly brighter than my eyes, and light brown pants to go with it, my red boots not having changed at all. Hey, you doing okay? All Might asked. He had stayed in his skinny form, still wearing a loose-fitting suit, and it just so happened to be his signature yellow suit, complete with a tie and everything. He was looking at my leg, which until this moment I hadn't realized was shaking up and down. Oh yeah, it's just that. When we get there we'll be at a disadvantage, and we won't know where or who the villains could be. It's possible that they might even be masquerading as some of the teachers or even some of the students. There's just so many factors to take into consideration when trying to find their hideout, and even then we have to be careful about keeping their attention on us to a minimum. All Might. I stared at my young successor, trying to make out half of what he was saying. Seems like you're taking this whole undercover thing a little too seriously, I told my green-haired apprentice. Stop nerding out. I broke him of his self-inflicted mumbling trance with my head leaned back in an exaggerated manner. Sorry, All Might. Apologizing for his ranting, I just waved it off, seeing as how I had helped him train for 10 months, I had grown used to it. Don't sweat it, kid, besides I'm a bit nervous myself. As soon as those last set of words left my mouth I had grinned in amusement at the immediate reaction from young Midoriya. What? There's no way you... I gave a light-hearted chuckle at his antics. Yeah, but it's mainly due to me having to stay in this form in front of a bunch of students. I looked away from him to look down at my hands, as if to grasp something that wasn't there. I know that as All Might I represent the symbol of peace, the pillar for our society, but as Toshinori Yagi I haven't had that many interactions in this form. I closed my eyes and thought before a thought came to mind and gave me a smile. Hey, you know, before I met you I don't really think I'd be able to go through with this. But after seeing all that you've done and accomplished, and how you even saved young Todoroki in the sports festival, well, I looked back at my young protege with overwhelming pride at how far he has come. I have to say, young man, you just keep on surprising me. And inspiring me too. Izuku Midoriya. I just looked at All Might in awe, as he stated why he even agreed to this. I couldn't help the tears of joy starting to gather at the corners of my eyes. All Might. I couldn't stop the raw emotion within my voice, and the tears accumulated in my eyes threatening to spill out, so before they could escape I wiped them away with my sleeve. Thanks. That was all I could say. My idol, no, my teacher, my mentor, someone whom I looked up to, and as of recently, something else but I couldn't quite place it. He simply chuckled softly and patted my shoulder in a comforting manner. Hey, what did I say about the waterworks? He jabbed at me with a proud grin plastered on his face. All Might. I just looked at my successor with pride. He really is something. You just have to keep this up, young Midoriya. Because pretty soon it'll just be you. I began thinking to myself about the future of my student. I know one thing for sure, you'll have to brace yourself for the hardships you'll have to face. And you won't have me there to help. I frowned in concern at that last thought. The path to being number one won't be an easy path. But I just know you can do it, young man. Mysterious bus driver. I just looked at the odd pair in my rearview mirror. I smirked in amusement. They'll definitely make things more interesting around here. With that I drove into the tunnel leading to Yakai Academy. Izuku Midoriya. I had managed to get my emotions under control, but just barely, and as I looked back up, it was suddenly a lot darker than it was before. You two must be the new guys coming to this school, right? I directed my attention to the voice of the driver. His voice seemed to send chills down my spine. All Might didn't seem as affected by it, but by his slightly deeper frown, I could tell he was on edge. Yeah, I guess you could say that, All Might answered before I had a chance to recover. I couldn't see too much of his face from the mirror, but I could almost hear the grin he had. Then you two better prepare yourselves, cause it's one scary-ass school. Before either of us could question what he meant by that statement, we had arrived at the end of the tunnel, and what greeted us was a creepy scarecrow with a pumpkin head. Looking past that surprised and shocked us the most. Past the cliff was a huge sea of crimson red. This is your stop, the driver told us as the bus door opened for us. After we had grabbed our things, in my case a duffel bag and All Might a smaller version that could hang over his shoulder, All Might was the first to get off and I followed apprehensively. Geez, it's like an entirely different world, All Might stated in absolute shock at how everything changed when we left the tunnel. And all I could do was nod at his statement, utterly speechless at the absurd change in the environment. All Might. I just couldn't believe it. Everything was so different. And what's up with the water? I thought, looking at the water with a quizzical stare before my brow furrowed in confusion. This doesn't make any sense at all. I muttered to myself, silently pondering on how things seemed to change so drastically. And a word of advice. I tensed up and looked back towards our mode of transportation. I did not like the feeling this guy was giving off. I'd watch each other's backs if I were you. And with that he closed the door to the bus and drove back into the tunnel that they just came from. My stare remained at that point for a few minutes before finally looking back at the situation and making sure young Midoriya was doing okay. So how you holding up? Maybe one of the villains used a quirk that can alter the perception of reality for others, or maybe they figured out beforehand that we were coming here and managed to set up some kind of trap for us. Of course, what else was I expecting? It seems like you're overthinking this whole scenario we're in, I told him with a deadpan stare. Geez, this one's really bad. Only one thing can get him out of it. Izuku Midoriya. If it was a trap, then shouldn't they have ambushed us while we were still disoriented? In that case, there must be something else going on. Texas, smash. I was snapped back to reality, with the image of my teacher spitting blood while punching my face in his normal form. I was then made aware of the sharp pain in my cheek. He hadn't used one for all, thankfully. Calm down, young man, you're overthinking the situation again, he told me while his arms were making exaggerated movements. Despite his method of getting me to focus, it had worked. Alright, sorry All Might. I apologized to him for going into my own little world again. No worries, you just gotta learn to rein it in. Which for you I'd be surprised if you could manage. At that statement we both shared a laugh at. Anyways, you should probably head on over to the class on the pamphlet Nizu gave us. It should have your schedule on it," he told me before walking away in a completely different direction than I was going. "Hey, wait, All Might, where are you going?" I asked him in confusion. "Weren't we supposed to head to the school first?" "Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that I'm supposed to go and see the headmaster of this school to find out which classes I'll be stepping in for," he said while nervously scratching the back of his head. "No need to worry, I'll catch you sometime later." And with that he walked away with a smile. But something seemed off. All Might, I think you're walking in the wrong direction. While we were on the bus I had taken the liberty of memorizing the school's layout, just in case." He definitely seemed surprised at my statement, before he scrambled around for his own layout of the academy. When he found it he looked at it with confusion and was sweating nervously. The sight was surprising for me. I don't think I've ever seen this side of him before. A small smile appeared on my face as I walked over to him and told him where we were on the map he had out. I pointed at the area we were at right now. "This is where we're at right now. If you're looking for the headmaster then I believe that you should head in this direction." As I was explaining this to him I was also dragging my hand pointing out where he needed to go. "Anyways, I'll meet up with you later, All Might." All Might. As young Midoriya was rushing away, I just stared at him with surprise. After a little while a tiny little laugh had managed to escape from my throat. "Geez, I really am getting old," I said with a grin to no one in particular before walking away, in the correct direction this time. Izuku Midoriya. The more I ran in the mysterious forestry, the more I had this ominous feeling, and to be honest, it was not helping my anxiety a single bit. Couldn't the people who made this school put it in a more peaceful environment? As I continued down the path, I could feel the cold sweat accumulating on my head. This place was terrifying. I don't know what's worse, face to face against the League of Villains, or wandering around on this path. Then all of a sudden he had this feeling of being watched, so I decided to trust my instincts and turned around. Just little me. I looked in shock at what appeared to be a cartoonish talking bat. "I'm a bat, wee." As it flew away I was just left there standing in shock. What the? I stammered out trying to figure out what just happened. "Look out," I had heard too late as I had now found myself on the receiving end of an incoming bicycle tire straight into my back. Jaya, I was launched forward from that. Who wouldn't be? From what it felt like whoever was riding that bike was going insanely fast. My back hurt like crazy, but I've definitely dealt with worse. "Oh, I'm very sorry. I just suddenly felt dizzy. Are you okay?" I heard the voice of the person that had rammed directly into my back. When I saw that person, however, my eyes widened. This person had bright pink hair and eyes that were a near perfect reflection of the same shade as my own. But the thing I noticed most about this person, and what triggered my more socially awkward side, this person was a girl. "Oh no, you're bleeding," the girl had stated with clear worry and her voice snapped me from my stupor. I looked down and apparently one of my hands had saved my body from the impact. It was only a little scrape compared to what I had inflicted upon myself at the sports festival. I was going to tell her that it was fine, but my mind wasn't working in accordance with my body. By the time she reached me she had pulled out a white handkerchief. She's so close. All Might. I wonder how young Midoriya is faring. After he had showed me the correct path, I had eventually met up with the headmaster of this weird and twisted place, and what he told me most certainly did not help ease my anxiousness at the situation. This school was made exclusively for monsters. At the very least I know what classes I'll be subbing for. The first teacher I had to check in with was Shizuka Nikanome, and I believe she was in class 1 to 3. I just hope that young Midoriya is taking the news better than I did. The revelation of monsters living amongst us, it isn't something one can accept so easily. Izuku Midoriya. I was not taking this situation very well. I'm already bad when it comes to speaking aloud to multiple people, but this girl was so close. Even after she had attempted to help with my light scratch, her helping wasn't the problem. It was how close she was. I shouldn't, but that sent, she was saying to herself, but I was in my own little world, trying to cover my glowing red face with comical arm movements. She was suddenly right in my face. She's so close. I was obviously not paying attention to anything at all at the moment. I could vaguely see her getting closer, much to my dilemma. I'm sorry about this, but I can't help myself, because I'm a vampire, and with that she had brought her mouth to my neck. Hwa. My eyes were now the size of miniature saucers, and my face was the color of Kachan's eyes. But the main problem about this whole thing wasn't the fact that she was this close anymore, it was that her chest was pressed against me. BBB dash. Ochako Uraraka. I was just walking back to my apartment, wondering what all might need Deku for. I wonder what I should have for dinner. I silently pondered to myself, when suddenly I felt a jolt in my back. I looked back wondering what that could have possibly been. What the heck was that just now? As I turned back around to face my path, the weird feeling never left me. Why do I have a feeling that Deku is in trouble? I shook my head out of those thoughts, hoping that it was just a bad feeling, and nothing else. Izuku Midoriya. The only thing that brought me out of my inner blunder was the feeling of lightheadedness. What the I is this? Could this be related to what her quirk is? I thought to myself as I felt my blood leaving my body, and that's what broke me from my blunder. Unfortunately, I couldn't push her away, because I just couldn't bring myself to shove her, so I just jumped away. When I had apparently panicked, possibly for the wrong reasons, she had seemed to just realize what she was doing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. She seemed embarrassed about what she had done. I myself was rubbing the spot where she had used whatever her power was. Her quirk must have something to do with blood, and even though I know that she bit me, it doesn't even hurt. Now out of my socially awkward situation, I had switched to my analytical mindset. Right as I was about to get one of my hero journals out, she looked over at the bag I had dropped. Oh, are you going to Yakai as well? With that other subject on my mind, I had completely forgotten that there was a girl right across from me. And as clearly as I could, with all the courage I could muster, "Oh, why yes, it's actually my first year going here." Nailed it. Really, that's great. It's my first year too, she told me now, standing up and dusting herself off. Well, that's one heck of a coincidence, isn't it? In that jumbled mess of words I had also attempted to give a shaky smile, which only seemed to convey my nervousness. So I have to ask. I had looked back towards her despite my personal dilemma. She seemed to have a look of apprehension and uncertainty about what she was going to say. What do you think about vampires? That question had flipped the switch to my quirk analysis mode, and it was fully focused on her. That must be what her quirk is. How cool. I thought to myself in amazement at the prospect and the possibilities of having such a quirk. Now back on my feet. I think that it's really amazing that you have such great abilities, I had told her with my hero fanaticism at full blast, not even thinking about the impact my words could possibly have on her. Wow, thanks. She had nearly tackled me back to the ground in a surprising hug. It didn't last long, but it didn't take much to remove me from my reverie and back into my previous state of mind, unfortunately. In that case, then maybe we can be friends. What do you think? She stated with an innocent smile on her face, not realizing what I was going through at the moment. Yes, sure. Oh, that's fantastic. I was nervous because I didn't have any friends here yet. Oh, I'm Mocha Akashiya, by the way, she finished with an eye-closed smile on her face. I'm Deku. Wait, did I say my name right? Well, it's nice to meet you. Hopefully we'll see each other soon. Bye, she stated before rushing off, dragging her bike away. Meanwhile, I was left in a stupor, just holding my stuff. Holy whoa, I just had a conversation with a girl. I thought with a victorious smile on my face that surely didn't look stupid. The same smile he had when Ochako saved him from tripping at UA. 15 minutes later, class 3-1. I had managed to find my way to the classroom on time and situated myself next to the window. At the moment I was thinking over the situation that All Might and myself were in. If we want to find where the villains are hiding, we first need more information about what they'd be doing here, and what they're possibly after. As I was pondering this, I was tapping my chin while also writing down guesses on what that girl's quirk could be. She said that she was a vampire, so taking that into consideration, some of the possible abilities that come to mind would be enhanced senses, increased strength, hypnotic eyes, durability, but could have a possible weakness against purified water, so pools would be a bad idea. And if she were to find herself in a fight against a water user's quirk, she could be at a severe disadvantage. Good morning, students. If you happen to be new here, then welcome to Yakai Academy. I was brought out of my thoughts to focus on my new homeroom teacher, who happened to have feline-like features. I'm Shizuka Nikanome and I'll be your teacher. Well, at least she seemed a lot more nice than Mr. Aizawa was. Now before we begin, I'd like for my new colleague to introduce himself, she stated while gesturing towards the door, and as soon as she did my eyes widened in shock. Hiya, my name's Tashinori Yagi, the newly introduced man said with a hand in the air, waving to the class with his signature yellow suit and grin on his face. But please call me Mr. Yagi, he said with his eyes closed smile. I knew that I'd meet All Might in one of my classes, but I didn't think he'd be in my homeroom class, I thought in bewilderment at how soon we've met up. Now you're probably wondering why he's here. MS. Nikanome stated, her expression not changing in the slightest. He's going to be the assistant and substitute when I'm not available, she explained while comically pointing at him, and with all might scratching the back of his head in what appeared to be nervousness. Now moving on, I'm sure that most of you probably already know this, but Yakai is a very unique school, one that's exclusively for monsters. Wait, did I hear that right? All Might, Tashinori Yagi. I have already been informed about this fact, but just by glancing at the growing uneasiness inside of young Midoriya told me that he had yet to figure this out. I'm sorry, young man, but I won't be able to help you through this one, not this time. I thought to myself, seeing Midoriya's face twist into horrified realization. Currently this planet is well under the control of humans, and with over 80% of the population with quirks. In order for monsters like you and I to survive class, the only option we have is to learn how to coexist with them, my fellow teacher stated while pointing at the class with her little stick. And that brings us to our first rule, Shizuka stated while almost too excitedly bouncing to the blackboard. Unless it's under special circumstances, on campus you must always remain in your human form. Everybody got that? She asked rhetorically to the whole class. As I took another glance towards young Midoriya, I took notice that his fists were clenched, and he was looking down towards his desk. I know that this isn't easy to accept, not for anyone, but you have to pull yourself together, young man. At that last thought I had unconsciously tensed my hands as well. Rule number 2, never, under any situation should you reveal your true monster identity to another student. I'm sure you understand why, she had told the whole class. I wasn't focusing on what she said very much, as the headmaster had already told me everything. I was more worried about how young Midoriya was taking this. I know that all of this is hard to understand, but you have to push through, young man. I couldn't console him, and that was the hardest part about this. But he has to get through this on his own, otherwise he won't be able to grow from this. Izuku Midoriya. I couldn't believe it, any of it. A school full of monsters, not people with quirks. I'm horrified at the prospect of it all, and I don't think I could clench my fists any tighter. I had them clenched out of fear. Fear at what might happen if I'm not careful. Fear at what might happen if they find out I'm not one of them. TCH, what a bunch of lame rules. I was brought out of my terrified trance by a voice that had a superior tone to it, much like Ka-chan. And you are, aha, Saizuko-miya, our homeroom teacher said with her signature childish tone. If we do just so happen to spot a human, why not just eat them? At least that's what I would do anyway, the guy beside me stated in a laid-back tone, with an underlying tone certainty, while sticking his long, and I mean possibly as long as Ajui's, tongue out in a menacing way that sent shivers down my spine. At his statement I looked away in terror. This can't be real. I just can't believe that this is happening, I thought, hoping that this was just a long messed up dream. Well now, there's no chance of that happening, because all the students and teachers are monsters, so, she stated matter-of-factly, no exceptions, got it. Finishing her statement, 2 tufts appeared on top of her hair and a cat's tail popped out behind her, none of which helped calm my nerves. You see, this school is enclosed in a giant, secret barrier, and even if a human wandered in here somehow, explaining how this school worked, she ended with something that shook me to my very core. They would be killed immediately, ending with a cheerful tone. Killed, I immediately. That doesn't make sense. Didn't she just get done saying that they were teaching on how to coexist with humans? Her last statement unsettled me even more than I already was. My breathing hitched the more I thought about it, but I had to keep myself calm, or else, I'll be killed on the spot. Click. I'm so sorry I'm late. I looked over to the door, despite what I'm thinking about, and saw a familiar face. Oh, don't worry about it, Ms. Nikanome said to the girl I had run into earlier. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Mocha Akashiya. What followed was a hushed multitude of voices, mainly the males in the crowd, had started talking about her. I didn't really catch any of it as I was half elated to see a familiar face, and half fearful towards the information I had just received. Tashinori Yagi. I had heard some of the degrading stuff the class had said about the newly introduced young Akashiya, and it just made me disappointed towards the younger generation. As the young lady was looking around the classroom for a seat, when her eyes laid upon where young Midoriya sat, her eyes widened very briefly, and what happened next surprised me. Deku, the cheerful young lady, had rushed and pounced my protege. It almost made me spew blood every time something I find comical happens. I'm so glad we're in the same class. However, the reaction of young Midoriya was pretty much as expected, but it still brought a smile to my face. Wapa. Izuku Midoriya. I now found myself getting dragged away by the pink-haired vampire by the arm, and all I could do was stutter out ineligible sounds of protest. I don't understand any of this. How could a school of monsters remain undiscovered for such a long time? And how did the villains find out about it? Thankfully, I wasn't thinking about what would happen if I were to be discovered anymore. I was brought out of my stupor when we arrived at a vending machine, As I was getting my beverage our hands had touched, and I had instantly pulled my hand back and waved my arms around in a comical manner. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that," I had stuttered out an apology. She stared at where I had grazed her hand for a moment and smiled. "Oh, you're so silly," she said while attempting to playfully shove me, the keyword, attempt, as I had found myself engraved in a pillar. Well, at least I know I was right about her increased strength, I thought to myself, my eyes dizzy from the force. After pulling myself out of the pillar, even though it still hurt a bit, we were both silently drinking our beverages. I took a glance at what she was drinking, tomato juice. You'd think that being a vampire, she'd have brought a blood pack. I guess this must be an alternative for her. "This is fun, huh?" Akashiya had asked me with a cheerful expression. "Also, do you have a last name? Or is it just Deku?" Her last statement made me look at her with comical realization. Actually my name's Izuku Midoriya. Deku was a nickname given to me by my childhood friend to make fun of me. I was telling her while moving my arms from side to side. Like how he explained it to Ochako, as I thought back on how I used to feel about it. I had gained a sullen expression. "You know, I actually used to hate that name." He said that the kanji in my name could also be read as Deku. And he said that it must mean a useless person. As I was explaining this, I heard her gasp at my statement. And for a while, every time he called me that, I wanted to prove him wrong. I started to get a slight scowl, until another thought came to mind, and I gained a small smile. But, as of recently, someone taught me that it could have a different meaning, and so now I really like it. As I was saying this, a genuine smile had grown on my face. The name Deku doesn't mean useless anymore, and I'm gonna prove it to everyone. I finished with a determined smile, staring off into the distance, and seeing an ethereal image of All Might's strong back. If I want to meet people's expectations, then I've gotta work 10 times harder than anyone else, isn't that right, All Might? I told myself with renewed confidence. Tashinori Yagi. After homeroom had been let out, I had decided to see how young Midoriya was faring. And I had been listening to his speech the whole time, and when he had finished his last statement, I could hear the courage return to his voice, and I couldn't help but smile with pride. "Young man." I know he didn't say it, so as to not blow our cover, but I could tell that he was talking about becoming a hero, and I had suddenly remembered the time when I had chosen him. "You too can become a hero." I had then chosen to walk away, with a proud grin on my face. "It seems that you didn't need my help after all, my boy. Keep this up and you may yet surpass me." As I was walking away, I didn't notice the figure that was also eavesdropping with clenched fists. Izuku Midoriya. After I had finished explaining my name, Akashiya had said how sorry she was that I had to go through that, and how amazed she was at how determined I was. And in turn I had covered my face as best I could since she was so close. And soon after, Saizuko had confronted us, asking why Akashiya would hang out with a loser like me, while holding me up by the front of my uniform. After that little debacle, I found myself on the rooftop where Akashiya dragged me to. That was pretty scary back there. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine, don't worry about it," I told her in a despondent voice. What Saiza said back there, well, he wasn't technically wrong, and he only proved that by showing just how strong he was. If he's that strong in his human form, just how much stronger is he when he transforms? At that thought, I looked at my hand and wondered if I could even hope to beat him without injuring myself, and without recovery girl. I can't afford to make slip-ups like that. "Are you sure? You seem really sad," she asked me in a very concerned way. "By the way, what kind of a monster are you anyway?" At that my eyes widened with shock. Damn it, I hadn't thought about that yet. "Oh, wait, we're not supposed to reveal that to each other. I'm sorry, you don't have to tell me." I couldn't help but inwardly breathe a sigh of relief. "No, it's alright, really, don't worry about it." Suddenly a random thought popped in my head. "Speaking of which, you don't really seem to remind me of what a vampire would look like." I instantly realized what I just said. "Yeah, I mean, and not in a bad way. It's just that." "No, it's fine, but you're not technically wrong, at least not right now at least," she interrupted me before she pointed towards the necklace she was wearing. "Is it some kind of seal on her true power, or does it just keep her in human form?" I pondered on it for a bit before she began to explain. "If I were to take this Rosario off, I'd change into my true form, a powerful and terrifying vampire. That explains it. If that's the case, then just how powerful is she without it? It's a charm that seals away most of my power away." She started to gain a small pink hue on her cheeks. "I can't even take it off myself." She seemed a bit embarrassed about that fact. "I guess that makes sense. If I had overwhelming power, I'd most likely want to seal it away too, or at least limit it." I told her the half-truth, as I actually did have that kind of power in the form of One for All. but I have to limit myself to 5%, and that's the most I can manage. Oh thanks, I knew you'd understand, you're my first friend here. She had jumped towards me, but since we're so high up I instinctively went to grab her, only to accidentally graze her seal. For that instant I had felt One for All react to it, and instead of seeing my pink-haired friend, I saw a menacing silver-haired person glaring at me with crimson eyes that sent shivers down my spine, and because of that I had immediately lurched back away from her, my eyes wide open with shock. Are you okay? She went to reach for me, but I unconsciously took a step back. Yua, I need to go and make sure all my stuff is put away, so I guess I'll see you later. I nervously lied and sprinted towards the other direction. What's wrong with this place? I don't think my quirk has ever had that kind of a reaction. As I was rushing through the halls ignoring the curious stares directed my way, I headed towards my homeroom to get my things. 15 minutes later, outside the school. I was just walking away, pondering about everything that had happened today. First, my teacher and myself are sent to a new school for possible villains. 2, we're told that it's a school for monsters. And finally, I never got to say goodbye to Mom. I was staring down at my phone, no signal. I need to at least tell her that I'm alright. Deku. I looked back and saw Akashiya running towards me. When she stopped, she was out of breath. Did she run all the way from the roof? Suddenly I felt an immense amount of guilt for just leaving her up there like that. Where are you going? She then looked at my bags and her eyes widened in shock. Don't tell me you're leaving. Before I could answer her, she had tried to pry my bag from my hands. No, you can't. I had tried to take it back, but with another tug from her, and one of my hero journals fell out. It was the one I was writing in earlier. When I noticed it, I tried to hastily pick it back up, but Akashiya had already beaten me to it. When she opened it up, her eyes widened in shock. Before in her eyes I could see anger. Don't tell me, you're thinking about going to a human school. You can't. She closed my journal before rushing towards me and she put her head in my chest. Shocking me, I really don't like humans. My eyes then widened in disbelief. Along with an immense amount of sadness, they can be so cruel. I know because I went to one when I was little. I felt so lonely. Because humans, they don't believe in monsters. I felt so different. It was like I didn't even belong there. At that I had to close my eyes. I know how that feels. I was quirkless for nearly my whole life, but I didn't give up on my ideals, and I had others who've supported me. We're so similar in so many ways, but we're also different in how we chose to remain. Deku, then you came along. And for the first time in my life I didn't feel alone anymore. She finished with tears rolling down the sides of her face. Yeah, I used to think that way too, but I didn't give up on others, just because they stopped believing in me. I said to myself, images of past events playing after she told me about her life. I'm sorry, Izuku. What can a quirkless loser like you even do? Sorry kid, it's not gonna happen. It's not bad to have a dream, but you gotta make sure they're attainable. Suddenly, a thought came to mind that didn't give me a very good feeling, and I know that telling her will only lead to horrible consequences, but well, what if I told you I was one of those humans? I'm sorry, Akashiya, I'm a human, and if you don't want to be friends, I guess I can't stop you. And with that I sprinted in the opposite direction, as fast as I could without One for All. Not daring to face back so she can't see the tears that started to form on my face. Deku, wait. I could barely hear her as I had already passed through the forest line. Mocha Akashiya. I can't believe that such an adorable, kind, and caring person could be a human. But he wasn't just any human, he wanted to be a hero. That much was made clear to me when I saw the inside of his notepad that I was holding close to me while I was chasing him down. Deku. Hey, where do you think you're going, babe? Why don't you stick around? I was stopped by that jerk who pushed around Deku. I smiled determinedly. Sorry, but I'm busy right now. He only laughed at that and started to transform into the most hideous and bulky creature I've ever seen. How about this? This is my true form. I'm an orc, the now giant grotesque Saiza said, and his tongue slipped out and stretched towards me. Ayahak. Izuku Midoriya. That sounded like. I didn't waste any time. I had activated full cowling and jumped from tree to tree. Mocha Akashiya. I was now covered in his disgusting saliva, as he had thrown me around with his tongue repeatedly. Come on, don't tell me such a sexy thing like you is shy. I've shown you my true form. Now show me yours. The beast stated towards me while doing a weird dance. Sorry, but it's against school rules. I wasn't going down without a fight. Well, we're outside of school now, so that rule doesn't mean shit. He then grabbed my leg with his tongue. Yeah, I was swung through the air, and slammed straight into a tree. Qua, I had gotten the wind knocked out of me. He only seemed to laugh at my pain. He was inching closer and closer, his tongue slowly slithering through the air like a slimy pink eel. It doesn't look like I'm getting any help. I'm all alone again. I could feel the tears of despair gathering at the edges of my eyes. I just wish I didn't say those awful things to Izuku. I clutched Midoriya's Hero Journal 13 as tight as I could, wishing that this wasn't happening. Smaz. Izuku Midoriya. Moments before, I had spotted Saizu in a bulky and spiky form, his tongue getting closer to Akashiya, zipping from tree to tree, branch to branch, gaining momentum for my attack. Smaz. I had hit him square in the jaw, sending back a few feet. Izuku. I glanced over at Akashiya. She only had the wind knocked from her. I had thought back on what All Might had taught me, so I had put on a fearful shaky smile, as wide as I could make it, and she looked at me in surprise. Don't worry, I'm gonna save you, I told her as bravely as I could, even though I was scared out of my mind. What the hell are you talking about? I focused all my attention on Saizu. How are you gonna save anyone with such a pathetic attack? He was now coming in for the attack. Okay, he's strong, but he's not that much faster than normal. The moment he tried to swipe at me, I had kept back towards a branch. He launched his long tongue at extremely high speeds, so I kicked off the branch and onto the trunk of another tree. If I don't let him land a solid blow and keep dodging, I should be able to tire him out, I thought, while the class bully kept trying to swing at me. If I can keep this up, I started zipping back and forth again, building up momentum for another attack. Then, I kicked off a thick branch and landed another solid sucker punch. I'll win. As I had formed a solid plan in mind, I sprung back before he could hit me, but I had stumbled on the landing, as the tree I tried to use was dead and had snapped under the pressure. My eyes widened at the sudden turn of events. I've got you now. His tongue had finally gotten a good grip on me, but instead of swinging me around, he had pulled me in for a punch. Gaia. He had landed an extremely powerful blow into my gut, sending me over a downhill. Izuku. That was all I heard before everything started becoming disoriented. I looked up with squinted eyes, and the blurry image becoming more and more clear. It was the bus stop me and All Might had arrived at. As I tried to get back up, I had a coughing fit trying to get the air back in. Izuku. I looked over and saw Akashiya running towards me with teary eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she cried while crouching down next to me. I guess monsters and humans are too different to get along. I couldn't stand seeing her like this. Why you shouldn't cry, I stated, trying my best to get back up, but it was shaky at best, and I was still on my knees. I'm a vampire, who drinks people's blood, and only hurts them in doing so, but the truth is, her crying only increased. I only wanted a friend, whether they were a human or a monster, I didn't care. She looked at me with a grief-stricken smile that made my eyes widen, but now, I don't think it's possible. What's with all this lovey-dovey shit? I scowled and looked up the slope I had just fallen off. I mustered up all the strength that I had and using all the willpower to keep myself up. Run, I'll hold him off, I told her while stumbling upwards. What? No, don't. I already know I'm not that strong. I made one for all burst from me, but I looked up and set my glowing green eyes towards Saizu with determination, and a smile, as wide as All Might's. That won't stop me from protecting you. Please, what do you think a small fry monster like you can do? I stared towards him with a raging inferno lit inside my soul. I'm not a monster, I'm a hero. And with that he jumped towards me at alarming speeds, laughing maniacally. I pushed Akashiya out of the way, accidentally grabbing the Rosario, 5% Detroit, Smawash. I met him head on, sparks flying everywhere from our collision. This kept up for a few minutes until he started to gain some ground. I grit my teeth. I just know I'm going to regret this. 10%. I mumbled to myself, clenching my teeth harder. Imagine the egg in the microwave. I kept chanting to myself, don't let it explode, Detroit, Smawash. I forced myself to go above my 5% limit all the way to 10%. It wasn't much, but at the time it didn't matter, because I was gaining ground now. What the? Hiya. I forced my way past his strength and knocked his fist back, reeling back my arm for another smash. I unleashed it against his stomach, which made him spit out and sent him skidding back into the slope, which kicked up a lot of dust. I can't see him. I was completely out of breath, and my muscles were torn apart. I was on my last legs. Is it over? I asked myself, before noticing the change in atmosphere. No, it's not. Don't go letting your guard down just because you got one lucky shot in. I looked back towards the unfamiliar voice, which was where I had pushed Akashiya out of the way. My eyes widened in recognition. It was the same face I saw when I touched Akashiya's rosary on accident, that same gleaming silver hair, and those intimidating orbs of crimson. Barely conscious, I asked her, who are you? She simply put on a prideful grin before holding up the hero journal Akashiya had taken. My eyes widened in recognition. If I were to take this Rosario off, I'd change into my true form, a powerful and terrifying vampire. I had remembered her saying to me before I had rushed out of there. I then looked back in my scarred right hand, and clenched tightly, and it was Akashiya's rosary. But something was different. It had cracks in it that resembled the glowing red veins of One for All when I activated it. It seems your quirk had something to do with it. However, now's not the time for that. I have to teach this low class his place, the now silver-haired girl stated before walking towards the indent size it had made. I was going to tell her to stop, but something in me told me not to do that. This overwhelming presence, this has to be her true power. Before I could see what happened next, my body had finally caught up with my mind, and proceeded to shut down. When I had blinked, it was over, as I had started to collapse, my muscles unable to hold my entire body weight. This is gonna hurt, I thought as I began to plummet towards the ground. I had braced myself for the incoming torrent of pain, but it never came. Instead, I felt a pair of gentle hands wrapping around me protectively. Hold up there, Mr. Hero. I heard the voice of the silver-haired girl say in a sarcastic voice. That was the last I had heard before I proceeded to black out. Inner Mocha. I had kept the so-called hero from gaining another bruise, until my eyes widened with shock. Using only 10% of his power did this. What the hell kind of a quirk would do that to someone? I know that the attack itself wasn't all that powerful, but that was a given as he had stated it himself while attacking. Just imagine what 100% of his power would do to him. I had already felt his power through the rosary, and from what I could tell, it was overwhelming. Speaking of which, I looked over at the seal and my eyes widened even further. It was badly damaged. Even if I were to put it on, it would only shatter under the weight of my power. I'll have to get it fixed. But even then, who knows how long it would take, I said to myself before setting it aside and laying Izuku down on my lap. He had a calm, peaceful, and serene expression on his face. It was pretty cute. But I'd never tell anyone that. As I continued to look at him, I had started to drag my fingers through his messy locks. Wow, his hair is surprisingly soft. I honestly hadn't expected it to feel like that. As I continued to look at him, I had spotted the hand that previously held my now broken seal. It was scarred, very much so. What the hell did you fight to get it like that? As I pondered this, I had also noticed how calloused his hands were as well. He must have worked through hell to get to where he is now. He didn't look like much, but appearances can always be deceiving. But now's not the time for that. I need him to wake up first before I can take him anywhere. Might as well see what's in his journal now that I take a closer look. It looks like it was charred by something. I had opened up the notebook that I had never let go of, despite transforming. Izuku Midoriya. I had finally started to regain consciousness, only to wince in pain at how much of a bad shape my body was in. Hey there, Sleeping Beauty. I looked up, and to my embarrassment, the silver-haired Akashiya was right above me. Not only that, what worsened it was the fact that I was in her lap. Hi, T there. I couldn't really say much, as I couldn't really think of anything to say at the moment. As I focused more on what she was doing, she had apparently been reading her journal, and not just any of them. Much to my embarrassment, she was reading the one I had written information about her on it. Hero Journal number 13. Hey, what or why you doing with that? Oh, I'm simply passing the time, and I've gotta say, you're one hell of a fanboy, aren't you? My face could now be mistaken for red Christmas lights. After she said that, she simply giggled at my reaction, but then something else came to mind, that calmed me down a bit and made me feel guilty. Listen, I'm really sorry for making you come out here for me. You know, the information you have about me is pretty interesting, and when you wrote this, I don't believe I remember my other half ever telling you about this. She had completely ignored my apology, much to my comical shock. But everything you've written down about me so far is correct, even down to some of my weaknesses. I'm impressed someone of your caliber was able to do that. I wasn't sure if that was either an insult or a compliment. I had chosen this time to try and sit up. Luckily, I was able to. Unfortunately, it was extremely painful, as my muscles were still torn to shreds. Yeah, well, I write down information on everyone I think is a great hero, even those who could possibly be heroes. Akashiya, I stated, finally sitting upright, and giving her one of my genuine eyes-closed smiles. Her eyes seemed to widen at that, before she looked away, her face hidden by her long silver hair. Mocha. I looked at her quizzically. Call me Mocha, I won't accept anything else, she had stated with finality and authority. Why yes, I mean, Mocha. She looked back with a stern look on her face that gave me shivers, before she smiled and leaned closer to me. You know, You've been bleeding this whole time, and I'm starting to think you're teasing me." She brought her lips to my neck and began to suck my blood. When she was done, I was left with a feeling of lightheadedness. But my neck felt the same as when pink-haired Mocha did the same thing, no lingering pain. She had a fond-beared smile on her face, and looked directly into my eyes, which made the dust of red to return to my face. "You know, I have a feeling that this will be an interesting school year." Chapter 2, You Too Can Be a Hero. Inner Mocha. After everything that happened, I was allowed to stay in my true form due to the seal being too weak at the moment. But as of right now, I was still groggy from being awoken from the seal so suddenly. But at the moment I was going over all that had happened, in that fight between Izuku and that low-class weakling. What Izuku had said brought up something to mind I had thought to be forgotten. Flashback 7 years ago. Me and my mom were watching the TV, and on it was my favorite hero, All Might. He was so cool, and so super strong. Right now he was being interviewed, and a certain question was asked that put me on the edge of the couch. "So All Might, would you say that anyone can become a hero?" I watched in anticipation for his next answer. All Might's fearless smile grew bigger, and he took a deep breath. Back to present. I was brought back to reality when I looked at the time. I needed to get prepared for school, whether I wanted to or not. Izuku Midoriya. I had woken up hours ago, and at the moment I was training my body, well, as best as I could anyways. Without recovery girl's quirk, my body was still extremely sore from going over my 5% limit. I was just in my dorm room, with my All Might merchandise hanging everywhere, lifting weights. I had gotten so used to it over the 10 months I had trained with All Might that it had almost become as natural as breathing. However, my phone's alarm went off. Before I could complete another set, I had to get ready for school. I had set down the weights, grabbed my uniform, and got my hero journal, and with all of that I made my way towards school. 6 minutes later. I now found myself walking away from the dorms, recapping everything that happened so far. I wasn't that freaked out about monsters actually existing, but I was more worried about how I was going to contact my mom and all my friends. I kept on pondering this until I heard a chorus of voices behind me. "Hey guys, check it out, it's that chick. Oh yeah, that new student Mocha. Oh man, she's so sexy she should be arrested." At that last voice I had gained a light warmth on my cheeks and decided to tune them out. Inner Mocha. I heard what those buffoons said. TCH, unbelievable. To think that they had the nerve to say such things in my presence. I wasn't allowed to resort to violence, so I couldn't teach them their place. But another idea came to mind when I saw a familiar mop of messy green hair. A plotting grin sneaked its way onto my face. As I started to walk faster, those idiots had thought I was going to them. But another moment later had changed that. Izuku Midoriya. I was going over the notes I had taken since I got here, and at the moment I was looking over Saiza's abilities. After Akashiya had beaten him, I later learned that he was an orc, and I can already say that he has enhanced strength, and his tongue that can act as an extra appendage. Hi there, Izuku. I had suddenly felt the arms of a certain crimson-eyed silverette hug my right arm, and much to my embarrassment it was pressed in between her chest area. Oh, hi there, Akashiya. She's so close. I had tried to get her to let go, but to no avail, as I was trying to keep her from seeing my embarrassed face. Inner Mocha. His reaction is so priceless, and those insects were now squirming with jealousy. I mentally smiled sadistically at seeing them ride like that. And whatever it is they were saying, I paid them no mind, as I had grabbed Izuku's hand and dragged him towards the school, unaware of the glaring figure hidden behind a tree. Izuku Midoriya. After a bit of her dragging me around by the hand, much to my embarrassment, she had finally let go before walking a bit of ways ahead of me. Oh, I guess she just used me to get away from those guys. At that, I began to feel downtrodden, and I began to twiddle my hands together. It must be difficult. I looked back up away from my hands, to see she hadn't even turned around. Being the only human here, you must be feeling alone by now. My eyes widened a bit. But luckily she still hadn't turned around. I wasn't the only human here. I had almost completely forgotten about that. I can't let her know. Why yeah, I guess you could say that. I lied to her in an almost whispered voice. Hopefully she would believe it. She took a side glance at me and I almost unconsciously took a step back in fear. Her gaze reminded me of how Ka-chan would look at me. Something inferior. Suddenly I saw her stumble a bit. It wasn't much, but it was enough to warrant my concern. I reached out a hand to help her. Hey, are you okay? She had swatted my hand away from her. I'm fine, just a skipped meal is all. She then looked towards my neck, and I just looked at her confusedly. She then had a look of a predator looking at its metal, and before I could react she had already clamped her fangs into my neck. I simply looked like a tomato with freckles, as she was now so close to me, that is until I felt a sharp pain in my neck where she had latched onto, and I then felt lightheaded for a bit, and when she was done I began to ponder on why she would do that out of the blue. My eyes then turned to a solemn realization. Was she just using me from the very start? At that thought my eyes became shadowed by my hair. Well, that was good. I don't think anything can beat that, she said before looking at me strangely. Oh, don't tell me that losing a tiny bit of blood like that made you disoriented. I then forced a smile before backing away from her. Oh yeah, no, I'm just fine, I'd better head to class, I told her in a despondent voice, before walking around her, and away from her. 2 minutes later, I began to think back on what just happened. Is she acting like that because she knows I'm not a monster? Or is it the fact that she doesn't consider me an actual friend? At that I began to drop into a depressed state. That is until I heard someone drop to the ground, and looked over that small pond I had wandered over to, and saw a blue-haired girl in a yellow blouse. Please, help me. At that I immediately rushed over to her without a second thought. Don't worry, I'm coming. I quickly sped over to her side and checked her for any injuries. Hey, are you alright? I asked the brunette. Wait, now that I have a closer look at her, she's that girl that goes to my homeroom. Without a moment's of hesitation I helped her up to her feet. Are you gonna be okay? I asked before carefully letting go of her. That is until she stumbled forward, and I felt something on my stomach. I looked down to see what it was. B. My eyes turned into shock and comically rolled to the back of my head. The same look when May Hatsum had landed on top of him. Hey, is something wrong? The blue-haired girl had asked oh so innocently. As for me, I had lost almost all of my courage. Why yeah, I am perfectly fine. LL, let's get you to the nurse's office, I said while comically trying to cover my face. Thanks so much. I hadn't been looking, so I had missed the mischievous grin forming on her face. Inner Mocha. At the moment I was on the roof of the school pondering on what had happened back there with Izuku. He was acting very strange, and I'm sure it's not because of how much blood I took from him. I sighed in frustration over the fact that I was acting this way over some silly little boy. Also, there's the fact that he lied to me. But when I had glanced at him I could see in his eyes the remembrance of something traumatic, and he had flinched almost instinctively. But then I just remembered what he called me earlier. That idiot. I told him to call me Mocha. I'll have to find him and teach him some discipline. And with that I began to head back to go and look for him. Izuku Midoriya. Sorry to hold you out like this, Izuku, the girl had apologized. Meanwhile I was just trying not to think about how her chest had smushed into my stomach, and failing to do so, but what she said had brought my full attention. Hey wait, since when did I ever tell you my name? I mean I know we're in the same class and all, but we never really gave each other our names, I had asked her. But then a thought came to mind. Oh wait, maybe you did hear it on the first day. I guess Akashiya must have said it out loud, and you were sitting behind sizes so I guess you could have learned my name from that. I really should have paid more attention to my surroundings at the time. Before I could get too far, she had stumbled forward, and I had reacted by catching her. But there was one problem. Her chest was pressed into my stomach again. I'm sorry, I have a condition in my body. She pressed into me deeper, making my eyes widen comically. It's my breasts. Her. Wait. Her. What? Sometime it just feels like they're being squeezed, and they might burst. I couldn't handle this. She's so close, and what she was saying. I don't know how to deal with that. Izuku. Why's? I couldn't even look at her, trying my best to cover my face in comical arm movements. Look into my eyes. I had forced myself with all my will to face her, as my neck felt stiff. Listen, my name is Kuruma, and I want you to be my friend. That was all she had said before my body had suddenly stopped listening to me. What's going on? I tried speaking but nothing came out. Is this one of her abilities? I thought, trying my best to escape from the prison that I suddenly found my mind in. As I was doing this my body had acted on its own. Sure, I'd love to be your friend. I can't control my body. Suddenly a thought came to mind. This is a lot like Shinse's brainwashing quirk, but it's different, not by much, but they are there. All I could do was think, as none of the words came out of my mouth. As I kept pondering this I began to feel extremely embarrassed that body was being used like this. I need to find a way to break her hold, and fast. Inner Mocha. I had found Izuku, but the person standing beside him had a strange energy emitting from her. But what made me feel a deep burning sensation was seeing him holding on to this blue-haired ant. Izuku, just what do you think you're doing? And who is this you're with? Izuku Midoriya. Akashiya. Thank goodness, maybe she can help. Almost right after that, Another thought came to mind that made me give up on that notion. She probably wouldn't even care what happens to me. I then began to feel more and more hopeless the more I thought about it. Inner Mocha. Who am I? We're in the same class, isn't that right, Stud Muffin? At her statement I couldn't help the feeling of unbridled rage. That's right, we're in the same class, babe. At that my eyes widened with shock, not because of what he said, but because of the way he said it. He would never casually say something like that without stuttering, or at least looking like a tomato while doing it. Izuku Midoriya. AWOL. Why would I say something like that? I couldn't believe this. I can't control my body and it just said that. This has got to be the worst day of my life. I just hope All Might doesn't hear about any of this. I'll never hear the end of it. Well, we better get going, Izuku, cause class is about to start. After that statement I then noticed that her eyes started to glow slightly. That must be how she hypnotizes others. She must be able to control the actions of others by staring into their eyes. If that's the case then. Inner Mocha. She's a succubus, I could tell, because of how she had stared directly into his eyes and that weird energy started to fluctuate. My brow furrowed at that. He must already be under her control then. As they began walking away, I decided to see just how strong her hold on him was. That would decide my next move. And just where do you think you're going, Izuku? Time to find out how strong her hold is. He turned around and when I saw his eyes it made me cringe. His eyes no longer held that burning flame that he had. But what he said next made me grit my teeth. I'm going with her. I'm tired of constantly being used by you. It's not like you see me as a friend anyway, Mocha. My eyes started to burn with a seeping hatred. How dare he? How dare he? Izuku Midoriya. Why did I say that? I'd never say anything like that. I need to apologize to her. If I can get out of this, that is. Tashinori Yagi. When everyone had gotten into class, the first thing we went over was the fact that a new transfer student was coming in today. But because they were coming in a day late, that person would be familiarizing themselves with the facility and be introduced to the class tomorrow. Right now I was walking around with my arms behind my back, checking to see if any of the young students needed any help with the lesson, but when I spotted young Midoriya I noticed that he had a rather sullen expression on his face, and the spark in his eyes was diminished slightly. Young man, are you feeling okay? I put my hand on his shoulder to try and comfort him. He looked up at me and I could see in his eyes that he was thinking deeply about something. Mr. Wayagi. I smiled humorously at that. He still wasn't used to saying my name. Actually, to tell that truth, I don't think things have been going so great. He tried to force a smile, but I just stopped him. Well, I think it would be better if we talked about it in private. I gave a reassuring smile to him. Just don't let it affect your studies, young man. I told him before patting him on the shoulder and walking away. As I checked up on young Akashiya and young Kurono, I could almost see the sparks of electricity flying between them. The sight was enough to make me take a step back. Nothing I can do here. After some time had passed I held young Midoriya back, and asked Ms. Shizuka to give us some time alone. Thankfully she was one of the nicer teachers and had allowed me some time with my boy. So, young Midoriya, first off, how have things been? I asked, wanting to know what he's been up to. We haven't seen very much of each other since we got here, so I wanted to know if he was doing any better than I was. I hope he is, because they still haven't provided me with a place to sleep, so I had to use the teacher's lounge to rest, and it wasn't the most comfortable thing I've slept on. Oh, fine, I guess. My brow furrowed. I could tell that this wasn't because of being in a monster school, cause after I had heard what had happened between him and young Komiya, I knew that he wouldn't just try to leave, he would stay and fight the villains regardless if I told him to or not. No, you're obviously not fine. I can't guide you unless I know what's wrong, I told him, putting my hands on my hips. Look, from what I can tell, you're probably not sure if you're cut out for this, and have self-doubt about this. Well, don't, I told him before bulking up into All Might. Listen well, young man. Just because the odds may seem overwhelming, doesn't mean you can't win, and if they keep pushing you down, I had my fearless smile stretched across my face with a thumbs up. You just have to keep getting back up. A hero can always find a way to get out of a pinch, never forget that. I finished with my fists now on my hips. He looked up at me with awe and a burning fire lit back up in his eyes, and slowly but surely a smile had formed on his face. Alright, I know what I have to do, thanks. And with that young Midoriya rushed out of the room. And I had simply deflated back to my original form, with a smile of my own filled with pride at how much he's grown. Inner Mocha. I was simply drinking from a can of tomato juice, not as good as Izuku's blood though. At that thought I had began to feel anger towards that damned succubus, speaking of whom, that weird presence had reappeared, and was heading my way. So I guess you're a vampire, right? I barely glanced in the direction the voice came from, already knowing who it was. At least that's what everyone is saying anyway. The annoying blue post had then jumped down and landed in front of me. You see, I came by to make a declaration of war. You're joking, right? I stated, looking at her with half-lidded, bored eyes. I'm dead serious. You see, I have a plan and you just seem to keep getting in the way of it all, Mocha. She told me, walking right up next to me. It took all I had not to pummel her right then and there. It's simple, really. My plan is to turn each and every boy here into my personal love slaves, she stated while moving her body around, making her breasts go everywhere, causing me to deadpan. And it's been working, thanks to my booby trap. Okay, I've had just about enough of this. Okay, listen, I already know what you are, and I can understand why you'd feel threatened. After all, vampires have their own natural charm to swoon our victims, I told her, crossing my arms underneath my chest. She simply growled at my statement, before she grinned smugly. And ever since you showed up, the boys have been ignoring me, so I knew that I'd have to beat you some way or another, and since turnabout is fair play, I've taken your precious Izuku away from you. The way she said his name pissed me off. TCH, you do realize how little that makes sense, right? I asked her, trying to understand the exact reason why she'd be targeting Izuku specifically. Hey Akashiya, oh no, talk about terrible timing. Izuku Midoriya. I had called out to my silver-haired friend. I needed to apologize to her. But as soon as I got there, I had to look away, as I had spotted the girl that had taken control of my body earlier, and I was too embarrassed to face her after what she had made my body do. What is it? I involuntarily flinched. Her tone was extremely harsh, and had a sharp edge to it. She must still be mad about what I had said to her when I had walked away with Kurumu. Oh, hey there, Izuku. The blue-haired girl had rushed over to me, and I tried my best to avert my eyes, but that was rather difficult as she had bathed her way through my comfort zone and had leaned into me. Sorry, and not right now. I need to talk to Akashiya. I tried as best as I could not to look into her eyes, but doing so was much more difficult than I had first thought. She's so close, and after all that stuff she made my body do, my mind's all over the place. I tried to keep my gaze anywhere but her eyes. Even though I didn't know what monster she was, I knew not to fall for the same trick twice. At least that's what I had originally thought. She had started to rub herself on me. I didn't intend to look at her, but my eyes instinctively shifted towards her in shock, and I had completely forgotten the dangers of it due to her behavior. It didn't take but a second for me to become ensnared in her trap. Love charm, she had whispered, and her eyes gained a slight glow, and before I had a chance to even think, I was trapped within the recesses of my mind. But now that I think about it, I guess it doesn't really matter. My mouth had moved on its own, just like it had done last time. Damn it, I can't believe she got me a second time. It all happened so fast. This wasn't good, it was anything but. Inner Mocha. TCH, I can't believe that he would allow himself to get caught like that a second time. Unbelievable. I had witnessed Izuku try to at least avert his eyes when he arrived. It seems he did at the very least find out that she was controlling him, and had enough tact to look away. But that was ruined the moment that blue succubus had barely grinded on him. He really needs to work on his behavior towards the opposite sex. I had rubbed the bridge of my nose in exasperation at his reaction, which allowed him to get caught again. Hey, there's something I just noticed. My attention was brought back to the situation at hand by the blue-haired headache. Izuku has a pretty nice scent on him, doesn't he, Mocha? Her eyes changed into a devious gaze. Yeah, almost exactly like a human does. My eyes narrowed, and my body tensed slightly. His blood must taste especially good. That's the only reason you hang around him, isn't it? So you can use him as a substitute for your breakfast. For some strange reason, I couldn't help but feel enraged at that final line. What I do to him shouldn't have anything to do with you. I was just a notch away from yelling that statement. And besides, it isn't like I'm forcing him to stick around. I am far above those kinds of tricks. I had stated nothing but the truth on the matter. Izuku Midoriya. I could only listen to Akashiya as she had finished her explanation, but it didn't exactly fill me with joy. She didn't deny it. Her statement had only cemented my earlier idea. So that's all I am to her. I guess talking to her about it would have been pointless after all. My body wouldn't allow me to express it, but all my hopes at the idea we were still friends had gone up in flames. So I guess I am nothing more than a meal for you. No, damn it, I still can't control my body. This is even worse than at the sports festival. You were just using me, so you could fill your own selfish desires. If I was in control of my body, my eyes would have widened with shock and dread. I would never say these kinds of things to anyone, not even my opponents. But her reaction surprised me. Her eyes were simply shadowed by her hair, and she had stayed silent, and quite frankly, it was a lot more scary than if she had just glared at me, and instead of reacting in any visible way, she had simply turned around and walked away, as if she had just had a pointless argument. As she was walking away, Kurumu, who was still right next to me, had simply started to laugh maniacally, which was a bit creepy and slightly confusing. Moments later in the infirmary room, I was sitting in a chair, across from the girl that had made quite a few revelations come up. She was rolling on one of the beds laughing about her victory with a thin tail protruding from her tailbone with a heart-shaped end to it. I wasn't really sure what she was going on about, but I knew that I had to set things straight with Akashiya, and at that line of thought I got out of my seat. "Hey, what are you doing?" the hypnotic girl across from me had inquired. "Ivy, got to set things alright with Akashiya," I told her, trying my best not to look into her eyes. I couldn't let her take control over me again, despite the outrageous stuff she did to try and get me to lower my guard. No, wait, and before I could react, she had buried my face between her, her. Huawei. She was currently holding my head in place. My arms kept moving in a comical fashion, trying to get them to listen and push her off, but I was in too much shock to get them to do what I wanted. You're feeling down in the dumps? Well, don't worry, your bosom buddy will make it all better." My eyes widened with mortified embarrassment at her statement. I tried to speak my protests, but they were quite a bit muffled, and I'm too embarrassed to say by what. Inner Mocha. I was currently sitting just outside one of the entrances to the school. I had a hand under my chin, arm propped up by one of my legs, with tick mark on my head with a comical frustrated expression across my face. Why am I getting so worked up over this? I had asked to no one, more thinking aloud than anything. I was both annoyed at the fact that this low-class succubus thought herself all high and mighty, and exasperated that Izuku had allowed himself to fall into her trap, twice. As I was mulling over this, another fact about succubus came to mind. TCH, that idiot. I stood up slowly, before feeling for the blue-haired pest's presence. I looked toward the general direction I had felt it. "Looks like I'll have to clean up another one of your messes." With that, I began making my way to where that irritation was making her move on Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. I had now found myself in the most dangerous situation I had ever faced in my life. My face felt like it was about to explode, my eyes as wide as can be, and my words refusing to come out of my mouth properly. I was laying on the bed the brunette girl was on, with said girl keeping me in place beneath her. Why you? I can't. I kept backing up until I had hit the headrest of the bed. I was cornered. I looked back over towards her, and her face had a tint of pink on her cheeks. Your reaction is so cute and innocent. That makes me a little less nervous about this. She had a sheepish smile on her face as she was saying all this. I couldn't form anything intelligible. You'll be my first, the first boy I've used this magic on. At that last word I had regained enough of my senses to try and look anywhere but her eyes. But I was just a moment too late when I saw the dim glow of her eyes, and the feeling of being trapped inside my own body. Don't run away. My body resisted every command I told it to, and I had a feeling that whatever magic she mentioned wouldn't bode well for me. Come on, body, move. Her face was slowly inching closer and closer, and the closer she got, the more desperate and panicked I became. This can't be how it ends. I can't let it end like this. At that moment time seemed to slow, and I was able to move my body. It wasn't much, but hopefully it would be good enough. I used the limited control I had and moved my arms behind her, grabbing a hold of her and moving my head past her gaze. It wasn't the most ideal action I wanted, but I'd have to deal with the thought later on, and her response to my movement didn't really help matters either. I told you this is my first time, you can't be so rough. My whole body tensed at that, and my face became as hot as an inferno. It only worsened when she wrapped her arms around me, albeit in a very different manner than I did. Be more gentle with me, alright? I used all of my willpower not to push her away at that. I couldn't allow her to take control of me again. I am sorry, BB, but WEH have to stop. I told her, my grip on her tightening so she wouldn't be able to hypnotize me. Can't do this. Kurumu Kurono. My eyes had widened in shock. How did he break the charm? Nobody should be able to resist the succubus magic, so how was he able to resist? This is impossible. I'll just have to try another charm. I tried prying myself away from him, but his hold was firm and unrelenting. Izuku Midoriya. It took all I had with my still exhausted body from the fight to keep a hold of her. She was very strong. I can't just leave Akashiya without apologizing for saying such awful things. I managed to tell her while still keeping a firm hold on her. You like her more than me. Wait, don't you, what? My face had lost its blush, and in my eyes were now comical circles with 2 dots, and in exchange for my embarrassment, it was replaced with confusion. What the heck is she talking about? Even though I've thrown myself at you, I could hear the growing anger welling up in her voice. Truth is, I've even done stuff to you that embarrasses me, you jerk. Her strength becoming too much for me to handle, she shoved me away from her. Now I'm really pissed, and then to my shock a pair of giant bat-like wings had sprouted from her back, and her tail appearing as well. I'm going to take everything that Mocha likes, and shred them to pieces. I was too shocked to move, and my sore body still recovering from the fight with Saizu. No, wait. I tried to back away but the wall prevented me from doing so. Time slowed, survival instincts kicked in, subconsciously activating One for All in my index finger, at 100%, and in a flicking motion, smash. Transfer student moments before. I was making my way towards the new facility I would be attending with my fellow classmate. I had been surprised when Midoriya hadn't shown up for class at UA, but I had been even more shocked when I had been told to attend a different school where my fellow classmate had apparently been sent to. Alright, first things first, I need to meet up with Midoriya and ask him what the situation is. I pushed my glasses up the bridge of my nose, revealing my sharp, intellectual, strict eyes, and then I can worry about the dormitories after. I had kept repeating this mantra since I had gotten on that suspicious-looking bus. I was also told All Might was going undercover here, but they didn't tell me why. My train of thought was cut off when the school came into view. Quite an interesting design for an academy such as this. I was interrupted by a loud shockwave, followed by high-pressure winds, but I managed to hold my ground. The event had caused my eyes to widen in shock. That was Midoriya's smash. But why would he need to use it here? I wondered to myself before I narrowed my eyes, and began running towards the occurrence. Whatever the case is, the only reason he'd use an attack that powerful is if he was suddenly thrust into a fight. With that in mind, I activated my quirk, which gave me an extravagant speed boost. Tashinori Yagi. I had felt the wind pressure that could only be related to One for All. My eyes widened. That was a fully powered smash. Whatever situation you're in right now, young man, I can't help you. I was currently digging up clues on the whereabouts of the villain's hideout, anything that could point in their general direction. But I know that you can find your way out of it. I did choose you for a reason after all. Inner Mocha. I had been rushing towards my destination, but when I was right next to the entrance of the room, smash, and suddenly the door was blasted off its hinges, and I had been hit with an almost overwhelming amount of wind pressure. It was so strong I had to cover my eyes. What is this? I had nearly been taken off my feet by the incredible show of force, but just as quickly as it had shown up, it was gone. I stared through the door frame that led to the origin of such power, and was left with jaw-dropping shock. Izuku Midoriya. I stared out the giant hole I had created. The entire wall and more had been completely blown away. I looked to see that Kurama wasn't injured, but she had a few scrapes from the debris, and she was floating in midair with her wings. Judging by how she can control the bodies of men just by staring into their eyes, and how she has some kind of secret magic as she called it, I have to assume that means she can permanently take control over whoever she uses it on. It's just a wild guess, but I'd say that I'm dealing with a succubus. I tried to guess what her other abilities might be, based on general knowledge on what she is, but other than invading dreams, and her already obvious ability to take flight, nothing else came to mind. Pain had now chosen to make itself known. As I gripped my hand that held my now severely bruised, broken finger, I grit my teeth. I don't even remember charging it up to 100%. I stopped nursing my hand in favor of focusing on the now recovered Kurumu. My body is still recovering, so I don't think I'll be able to go all the way up to 5%. I looked forward, my gaze set in determination. I need to find a way to defuse this situation. As I was pondering this, even though I was focused on Kurumu, she had managed to wrap her tail around my leg. I didn't even notice. Before I had time to react, she had flung me out of the building at high speeds. I can't slow down. I was shooting straight towards the ground. I clenched my eyes shut, waiting for the impact, only to feel the sore ache of my muscles and broken finger. I slowly opened my eyes to see that Akashiya had stopped me before I had crashed. Looks like you've gotten yourself into quite the situation. She had a smug look on her face, and her tone was slightly sarcastic. Honestly, are you going to have me clean up all your messes? She stated in a more aggravated tone, with a snarky backlash to it. Akashiya. She had gently set me back on my feet. I looked back towards her. Listen, if you're going to apologize, then save it. I've known that you were under her control. but for quite a while I couldn't tell what she was up to. As soon as she finished her statement, her presence shifted, and there was a soft red glow beginning to form around her. The atmosphere changed, and so too did the sky from a dim blue to a dark red. She's unleashing her true power. My features hardened at the prospect of it. I had yet to see her in action. Now was the perfect chance to find out her true abilities. Then why do I keep feeling like this can only end badly? Akashiya looked over at where Kuruma was hovering with a menacing grin spread across her features. Sorry to keep you waiting. Even her tone had changed. It became 10 times more intimidating, and had gained that superior edge to it. What the? She suddenly changed. All of Kuruma's confidence had disappeared, and she appeared to be extremely nervous. Is this the true power of a vampire? Her voice was shaking with fear, and it looked like she couldn't move. Why don't you come down here and find out? Or are you too afraid you'll lose? Little Miss Succubus. I could already tell that this fight wouldn't last long, so why did I still have this feeling of dread? You must be joking. I'm not gonna lose. No, I'm on a very important mission. The fate of my whole race is at stake. What she had said was concerning, and immediately elicited my attention. A mission? Yes, the reason we succubi seduce men is so that we can meet our destined one. My kind are very few in numbers, so in order for my race to survive, we must carefully select our destined one from a large pool of men that we have bewitched with our love charm. The more that she explained it, the more I started to realize just how much was at stake, and I'd almost done it too. Suddenly her nails grew to the size of her forearms, and they looked razor sharp. But you got in the way of that mocha. Kuruma rushed at high speeds towards the silver-haired vampire in a clawing motion, but the silverette simply sidestepped. That's why I can't let you live. She tried slashing at her again, only for the vampire to dodge again with next to no effort. So that's it? Is that really the reason you picked a fight with me? She was staring at Kuruma like a lion would look at their prey. Big mistake, she said with a sadistic smile on her face. Kuruma seemed to hesitate for a moment. She tried to charge at the crimson-eyed girl, only for Akashiya to appear behind her. Ah, you're so fast. She was shocked at the display of pure speed. And you're slow. She grabbed Kuruma's tail. Now you'll experience the true power of an S-class monster firsthand. She began to swing her around by the tail before jumping up and unleashing a devastating kick. Kwa! When the blow landed, a small gust of wind had followed. She's so strong, it's like she's on a completely different level than before. My gaze followed the bluenette. She'd been sent through multiple trees before crashing into a thicker trunk, getting the wind knocked out of her, collapsing. I am sorry, I'll stop. I promise. Not only did she sound like she was in pain, her voice also started trembling. She was scared. I've got no guarantee of that. My eyes widened in disbelief. This is why I was having that bad feeling. So to be safe, I'll be tearing them off. Your wings and your tail, I mean. Time slowed. My body moved before I could even think. My body glowing with the red veins of One for All. And what do you think you're doing? Akashiya's voice was cold, and it shook me to the core. Inner mocha. I couldn't believe it. That fool had just run directly in my path. Couldn't he see that I was making sure she couldn't even attempt to control him? That's enough, Akashiya. She promised that she would stop. Why, you don't need to mutilate her. Even though his body was trembling, and his voice was shaking, but his eyes surprised me. Therein laid a burning will to save others, and even though he was likely terrified, he was standing there, protecting the succubus, despite not being under her control. Oh, and why exactly do you care? This has nothing to do with you. I tried to get him to move by intimidating him, but if I had to, I will use force. Izuku Midoriya. Why, yeah, you're right. This doesn't have anything to do with me. Suddenly I remembered something All Might had said to me. Sometimes getting involved in matters that don't concern you is the essence of being a hero. That was after I had convinced Todoroki to use his left side in our fight at the sports festival. I looked at Akashiya with a shaky smile. But sometimes, a hero needs to butt in, even when they don't need to. I had found my ground, and despite my body, I wouldn't let her hurt her. Inner mocha. My eyes widened. He sounded just like a memory I thought I had forgotten flashed in my head. Flashback 7 years ago. So All Might, would you say that anyone can become a hero? I watched in anticipation for his next answer. All Might's fearless smile grew bigger, and he took a deep breath. I believe that those who strive to protect others, and those who want to inspire others, but most importantly, to all of you viewing at home, I looked at the screen in awe, as he pointed towards the camera. All you need are the guts, determination, and above all, you need to have heart. If you have all of these qualities, and ear-to-ear smile made its way onto my face, you too have the potential to become a great hero. It felt as if a great power had blown my hair back. I jumped for joy in the air. He was the best hero in the entire universe. He's such a cool hero. I was practically running around now. I want to be a hero like that someday. I'll become strong, and one day, I stuck an all-might pose. I'll be just as great a hero as he is. Present time. I didn't even know that memory was still in there. I looked towards Izuku. He wants to be a hero, and despite the odds, he won't hesitate to protect those in need. I thought to myself before a serene smile started to form on my face. I began to power down. Izuku Midoriya. The oppressive aura in the air started to dissipate, and the sky began to return to its original color. Why would you, save me? I looked back to see Kuruma with tears threatening to spill from her eyes, and she was still trembling, albeit for a different reason now. But in response to her question, I simply smiled towards her, not in pity or nervousness, but a smile of understanding. But my words were still a little jumbled as I still couldn't get my mind off of those things she made me do. Well, to be honest, I can kind of see a bit of myself in you. Her face turned to one of surprise. To be honest. For almost my whole life I was scolded for trying to be something that everyone thought was impossible for me to achieve. The more I talked about this, the more my words started to just seem to flow. And for a time, no one would believe in me, so I had decided. If no one would have faith in me, then I'd have to have faith in myself. My gaze shifted to my scarred hand. I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself to others, and at one point I didn't think I'd ever achieve my dream. I clenched my fist as I was saying this, until I continued and relaxed it, and then I met him, the first person to say that he believed in me. A smile of fondness spread across my face, and my eyes felt like they wanted to cry at the memory of the moment my whole life changed. Young man, you too can become a hero. He taught me that you can achieve your dreams, no matter what obstacles are put in your way. I looked back over at Kuruma, and I scratched the back of my head in embarrassment. So in I guess you could say that I know what you're going through. I finished with a nervous laugh. Kuruma looked at me in awe, and she then began to cry. Of what reason, I'm not entirely too sure, but in between her sobs I could somewhat hear her mutter a thanks. I just smiled nervously. It was nothing, really. Geez, you're so hopeless. I looked back at her with my features relaxing. Her tone had changed from being tense and merciless, to a more calm and less aggressive voice. But if you say that she can be trusted, I guess I'll just have to take your word for it. She then began to march right up to me. Also, I told you to call me Mocha. Make that mistake again, and I'll make sure you learn your place. Are we clear about that? She was just a few feet away from me, and her tone had changed back to being ruthless, and it put a shiver in my spine. Sure, yeah, see crystal clear Kashige. I mean Mocha. I was making comical arm movements, as a nervous sweat began to form on my head. Good, I'm glad we could come to an agreement. She then relaxed and I let out a breath that I didn't even realize I was holding in. Also, earlier when we were walking to school, you seemed to be acting strange. I froze. She didn't look upset or anything, but her gaze was quizzical. Oh well, the thing about that is, I began to feel my anxiety kick in, and it really wasn't a good time for it to come into play right now. I just kept having this feeling that you didn't really see me as a friend. I was now holding my hands together, fiddling with my thumbs as I spoke, not looking into her eyes. Inner Mocha. My eyes widened at his statement. Is that really how he felt? Ugh, I should have seen the signs from how he was acting before, but it's not like I'm very good at this whole friendship thing. Were you seriously stumped over a silly matter like that? I had crossed my arms in exasperation. Because if you really are, then you're even more foolish than I thought. I had simply stated the truth of the matter. The whole thing in of itself was redundant, but his response to my blunt accusation was rather comedic, as he had a comical storm over his head. Izuku Midoriya. I guess she was right about that. Now that I really think about it, it was kind of dumb. Of course I see you as my friend. I looked back up towards her in slight surprise. I didn't think she'd just say it out loud. But don't get too comfortable. I stiffened as she got right up in my face. She's so close. I've seen what your power does to you if you overexert it. She pointed towards the hand with my broken finger. And this simply will not do. Why did I have a bad feeling about this? Mocha, then turned on her heel and began walking away, starting the moment you've recovered. I'm going to see just how well you fare in a fight against an S-class. And with that she left. Wait, what? I don't think I was looking forward to my recovery anymore. Transfer student. As I rushed over to the vicinity of my friend's attack, I saw two figures in front of a tree. One was sitting against the trunk of a tree, and the other, more familiar figure was standing. It was Midoriya. but it seems that the conflict has already been settled. But he looked exhausted, and it seemed as if he might collapse soon. The other figure didn't look too good themselves. Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya. My eyes widened in surprise at the familiar voice. I turned toward the source and my eyes grew comical. Tenya, what are you doing here? I was shocked. What in the world was Tenya doing here? I've been sent here by our superiors to check up on you, and to make sure you don't waver from your studies, my friend stated while robotically waving his arms around. Also, are you okay? You look like you might collapse, he asked with concern. After my initial shock died down, I had given him a reassuring nod. Yeah, I'm alright. It's her that needs more help than I do. I motioned towards Kurumu, only to find that she was gone. My eyes turned to comical shock. Who are you talking about, Midoriya? There's no one here but us now, he stated simply and in slight confusion. I simply shook away shock and sheepishly scratched the back of my head. Oh, I guess she must have left while we were talking. Tenya simply nodded in acceptance at my statement. After a while he had asked about the situation, and what All Might was doing here as well. At first I was confused, but he told me that the principal of UA had told him that I would be able to explain the situation to him. I told him everything that had happened, from getting taken away by All Might, to the fact that we're in a school for monsters. His reaction surprised me. He seemed a bit shaken by it, but other than that he adjusted to the information rather well. That's the class rep for ya. After explaining everything regarding the villains hiding out here, I had shown him everything, even though he probably memorized the layout more than I did. We now found ourselves in front of the dormitories. Well, now that I'm aware of the situation, I can now focus on making sure you stay on top of your studies. His statement caused me to gain a comical sweat drop. Strict as always. As future heroes, we can't afford to be slacking in any area, even if there are villains lurking about. And with that we both headed towards the nurse's office, to get my finger treated before heading towards our dormitory, and our respective dorm rooms. Coincidentally his was just a few doors away from mine. Why do I have a feeling that he was put there on purpose? Tashinori Yagi. Right now I was staring at a few files I managed to dig up that seemed to have a hints leading towards villain activity. There wasn't anything concrete, but it was better than nothing. I began to rub my temples in aggravation. I shouldn't get so worked up over this. Young Midoriya and I have only been here for 2 days, so I shouldn't expect them to just show up out of the blue. I released a sigh of frustration, trying to calm myself down. Hey there, Mr. Yagi. I comically spit some blood in shock and surprise. Hard at work, I see. I clutched my chest to calm down. I looked over to the source of my near-heart attack. It was Miss Shizuka with her usual feline ears and tail exposed, despite what she told the students. Yeah, just looking over some of the students' files, I told her with a half-lie. I couldn't just tell her that I was investigating the whereabouts of villains. Luckily, she bought it. Oh, I see. Her usual laid-back posture had changed slightly. I couldn't tell what it was, but it was different from her normal attitude. Well, I was wondering if maybe when you have some free time, we could go and drink some coffee together and talk sometime. Her cheeks gained a pink hue for whatever reason. You sure? When did you want to meet? I asked with a curious look. She must want to talk about young Akashia's condition, now that she was stuck in her monster form. It must be confusing for Miss Shizuka to deal with, and she probably just wanted another teacher's opinion on the matter. Her whole expression brightened, and she seemed to be more excited than her normal attitude. Really? Well, how does during the introduction of the clubs sound? That would actually be a convenient time to talk, as all the students would be busy trying to find a club. That could work. I guess I'll talk to you then. I waved her off with a small grin on my features. It's a date. She left excitedly and with a bounce in her step, and closed the door behind her. Blood spurted from my mouth in profuse amounts at finally realizing what she just said. A what? Izuku Midoriya. The next day had come by faster than I thought. I was currently walking with Tenya out of the dormitories. We were mainly talking about everyone's reaction to my sudden disappearance, which made me feel slightly guilty. But Tenya assured me that they were informed of the situation and were calm about it afterwards, except for Ka-chan. It seems he had criticized that a Deka like me shouldn't go on undercover missions with All Might. So, how is Uraraka doing? Did she take the news well? I asked my no-nonsense friend, concerned about my other friend's reaction towards my absence. She took it fairly well. At first she was worried about what might happen to you on your own, but she calmed down a bit when we were told I was being sent to look after you, he stated with a small grin on his face towards my concern for others. Oh, and who is this with you? I turned back, to find my silver-haired friend making her way towards us with a quizzical stare. Oh, alright, aka is gay. Mocha, T, this is my friend Tenya Lida. He's from the other school I went to. As I was telling her this, I had included exaggerated arm movements as if indicating from one thing to another, when Izuku explained to Uraraka why Ka-chan called him Deku. "Hello there, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Let's both do our best this school year," my taller friend stated with his overenthusiasm while bowing in his usual robotic movements. She seemed to be taken aback by his attitude. If the comical expression on her face was any indication, well, I guess so. "My name is Mocha Akashiya. So I guess you're the new transfer student the teachers were talking about yesterday. Oh, and make sure to call me Mocha," she stated in a tone that demanded authority. Her tone seemed to take Tenya back. Oh, I didn't like where this is going, if the comical look on his face was anything to go by. After that little exchange, we now found ourselves walking towards the school together, after Tenya had entered his lecture mode, and AKA Mocha, not wanting to get even more confused than she already was, decided to just accept his over-the-top seriousness. Morning. I had jumped in surprise at the sudden entrance of another voice. "Hi there, Izuku." I looked at the source of my sudden scare. It was Kurumu with a joyous smile on her face. "I baked some cute little cookies for us. How about you and I eat them together?" she asked while holding out a small box, which I assumed was what she was talking about. But just seeing her reminded me of the events of yesterday. "Oh, hey there, WW, what are why you doing here?" I was trying to cover my face in comical arm movements. My face beat red. "You're so silly. I already told you that I was searching for my one and only destined partner for life, didn't I?" She was saying this while swaying her body from side to side. I could only nod in response, too embarrassed to make a verbal response, and Mocha looked as stoic as always, while Tenya simply looked confused at the situation. Well, she then directly faced me, and much to further my state of embarrassment, "I've decided that it has to be you." WWWWA. I was utterly shocked and horrified. My entire face was now as bright as a stoplight. Tenya was still confused, but my other friend had an expression that I couldn't quite place. "Hey, don't be like that. After all, it's your fault for risking your life to protect me the way that you did. Now I'm absolutely in love with you." She then ran towards me and pressed herself against me. At this point my mind had shut down, and my eyes had a comical lifeless look in them. I wasn't being controlled, but my body just wouldn't move, as my mind had just shut down. I felt my arm being pulled by my other side as the silverhead had grabbed onto it, not saying anything, just glaring at the bluenet. I then felt another tug on my other arm caused by the bluenet, returning the glare, practically sending sparks between the two. The two of them kept this up to the point where I became extremely dizzy. This sight might have been comical, if I wasn't the one in the middle of it. "Cease this behavior at once. This is hardly school appropriate," Tenya had exclaimed with him using exaggerated, comical arm movements. I don't remember how this started or what was said during any of this, but the thing that brought me back to reality was a lightheaded feeling, and a certain silver-haired vampire with her lips attached to my neck. Chapter 3, The Witch and the Quirkless. Izuku Midoriya. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't. Why would they do something like this? It doesn't make any sense. Why so early? And it was tomorrow. Midoriya, snap out of it. As future heroes, we can't afford to be slacking. We must strive to excel in every area. Well, at least it wasn't the end of the world. At the moment I'm sitting across from my friend Tenya. Right now we're studying for the upcoming exams. I can't say that this doesn't at least give me some form of comfort though. A couple of days have passed since the incident with Kurumu, and my body began to feel better. My finger was still in a brace, but I was told I could take it off in a week. The day Tenya was introduced to the class had been the point where even the teacher herself was overwhelmed by someone else's personality. He had even managed to shape up some of the other students with his over-enthusiastic manner towards academics. Inner Mocha. TCH. I can't believe the school is making me waste my time on something so foolish. These exams were merely child's play. I had already finished studying, but at the moment I couldn't help but remember something my outer self once watched. Flashback to the UA Sports Festival. I was watching the screen and the fight that was on was intense. There was this green-haired boy fighting against a heterochromic-haired, and there was something the greenette said that shook me to my core. "It's yours, your power, not his." I know that it was directed towards his opponent, but it just resonated with me. What happened next was jaw-dropping. His opponent's left side burst with flames. Endeavor freaked out for some reason, but the green-haired boy was just smiling. Why? Why would he be smiling? Knowing that he'll most definitely lose this, his opponent said something, but they were overtaken by the roars of his fire. The next thing everyone had seen was an explosion of colliding untamable powers. Present. So, I have seen him from before. Let's just hope that he doesn't do anything foolish to draw attention to himself. and with that I kicked back and relaxed, cause these exams were hardly worth the effort. 2 days later. Izuku Midoriya. Over the past few days, I got a little less nervous around my new friends. I had even managed to say Mocha's name correctly, but it still feels awkward to say her name like that. I was walking towards the board that would display our rankings with anxiousness. I did my best studying, but I'm not sure about how well I did. I started at the end, not really finding my name. I guess that's a good sign. Hey, check it out guys, I came in 201st. I looked behind me, and saw a group of 3 in their monster forms. I came in 222nd, alright. Oh man, I'm so jealous I almost can't stand it. If they're this excited on getting those rankings, then what chance do I have on getting any higher than that? I mean, I'm pretty sure I got a majority of the answers right, but even then I can't say for sure if I got high marks on it. Inner Mocha. I was calmly walking down to the rankings roster. I was confident I had gained a superior rank compared to the rest of these monster rejects. That Mocha sure is something. Not only is she smart, she's got to be the sexiest girl I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, she's got brains and beauty. I never gave one of those statements a second thought. It was to be expected after all. Being an S-class monster, of course I would be ogled by the low class. I looked up to see Izuku in front of the roster, muttering something to himself, and it seemed those around him were weirded out by him. I thought that not drawing attention to yourself would be a simple matter, but I guess not. I thought in exasperation, I'd better get him out of his reverie. With that in mind I began to make my way up to him. Izuku Midoriya. Huh, I was brought out of my little session by my prideful crimson-eyed friend. Oh, hey Mocha, how are you today? I was now rubbing the back of my head in embarrassment at having been caught up in another one of my rantings. I'm simply here to take a look at my ranking. I have no doubt that I made it far above these insects. Her statement took me aback. If she was that confident about her scores, then just where exactly did I settle? Midoriya. I looked behind Mocha's shoulder to see my friend Tenya walking towards us with his usual robotic movements. And Miss Akashiya, I see that you've both already checked to see our rankings. I've no doubt that whatever rank we have, we'll all do our best to improve. Mocha had for some reason let Tenya keep calling her that. It was probably due to the fact that she didn't want to get lectured about school etiquette again. Well, yeah, about that. They had both looked at me quizzically. I am still looking for my rank, to be honest. I don't really think I did too good, I stated while looking back towards the ranks. Well, I'm not worried in the slightest. I already know that I got a high ranking. Mocha had bluntly put it, as if it was a simple fact while walking towards the higher rankings. She simply grinned smugly. See? I told you it wasn't that big of a deal, she stated whilst pointing at the 14th rank, which had her name on it. Tenya had also gone to where his rank was. It seems I too had a higher ranking. He had a proud smile on his face while gesturing towards his name. He had gotten second. But next time I'll strive to get first. His enthusiasm sure was one to be admired. Mocha seemed to be a little annoyed at the fact that Tenya had gotten a better rank than she did. My eyes widened. I looked back to where I thought I saw it. No, did I really? I looked back towards just next to Tenya. Whoa, and no way. I actually did, I said in disbelief. I had gotten just below Tenya's rank. I was third. I got third rank. Inner Mocha. My eyes widened at his sudden declaration. He didn't seem to have confidence that he would get a good placement, but he had managed to get third place, far above my rank. I knew that by his lack of self-confidence that he wasn't faking it. My eyes narrowed in contemplation. Why would he lack so much confidence in himself, despite the fact that he's clearly more intelligent than he gives himself credit for? And if that journal of his I've looked over was anything to go by, then this exam should have been nothing to him. I was watching them with fascination. She's so amazing. I had been so infatuated with Mocha. She was so confident in everything she did, and was good at what she put her mind to. Congratulations are in order, Yukari. I looked back to where the snarky toned voice had come from. It's those guys from my class. The 3-man group was walking up to me. As expected, you're the undisputed #1 student this year. They were now standing a few feet away from me. I was starting to get a little uncomfortable. I guess somebody knew what they were doing when they let you skip all those grades, I guess. The whole group's eyes turned to contempt. But you listen to this. Don't try and press your luck, or else you'll pay the price. Press my luck? I was completely confused now. What did he mean by that? Yeah, that's right. For example, that ridiculous witch costume of yours. He comically pointed at my outfit. Then his lackey looked at me creepily. It's against school rules. You'd better take it off. He finished with an even creepier grin on his face. It kinda made him look stupid. But he did have a point. It was supposed to be against school rules. Well, yeah, but this is my. As your class president, just the fact that you're even here is enough to give me a headache, so spare me the sob story, the leader stated while overdramatically putting his hand on his forehead. They all laughed at me, so I sneakily put my wand behind my back, and used my magic to make 3 metal buckets fall on top of their heads. Gah. Oh what? Ah ha ha ha, it serves you right, you big stupid jerks. I laughed at their expense, while wiping humorous tears from my eyes. Why, you little brat? The leader's voice had a threatening tone to it. Don't you know who I am? He then began to charge at me with his claws out, making my eyes widen in shock. I'll teach you, you prepubescent pissant. Hey, leave her alone. A familiar green blur appeared in front of me. Izuku Midoriya. I had stepped in just in time. This guy was about to hurt this little kid. Who the hell are you? The guy across from me with his claws still out had asked in irritation. I scowled towards his actions. You shouldn't harm others just because you don't like the way they act, so back off, I told him in a resolute voice. The guys just looked around at the ever-curious and growing crowd of students before relenting. I think we'll just leave it at this for the time being. Come on guys, let's go, TCH. Disgusting witch. My eyes widened at that. The way he said that reminded me of my days as being known as quirkless. He looked back at the girl in disgust. I swear just being in the same class as you is enough to make me want to vomit all over the place. I sighed in relief as he simply walked away with his pals. But something else came to mind that was concerning. Later in the cafeteria, the little girl I had saved was sitting across me in silence. With my friends Tenya and Mocha sitting next to me, I didn't know where Kuruma was. But this awkward silence was a little uncomfortable. My name's Izuku Midoriya. Your academic scores are high, while your athletic ability is above most. The only ones above you in both are Tenya Lida, whose grades are almost unrivaled and his athletic capabilities leave nothing to joke about. As she said this surprising information, my friend Tenya was just blooming with pride, the same face he made after the basic training exercises with all might. Mocha Akashiya, however, has unrivaled athletic abilities, and her intellect is high as well. At this, Mocha just grinned in satisfaction. And my name is Yukari Sendo. So you're the one to receive first place. I have to say, I'm truly impressed with your ability to gain such high marks, especially at your age. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a tad bit jealous. Tenya seemed to turn back to his robotic movements, and his movements seemed to take Sendo aback as well. Wow, you must be pretty smart, to be able to be here at your age. I was in awe. She was so intelligent. She's so much more impressive than I am. Even I have to say that your intellect is highly impressive. Mocha had her arms crossed and a small grin on her face. Well, that's very nice of you to say, but I'm far from being the impressive one. Sendo was blushing at the genuine praise. You're by far the most beautiful girl I've seen, Mocha. You're so confident, and smart, and cool. Her words had brought us confusion. Then she looked at me with a deadpan expression. You, however, are the complete opposite. I comically slumped my shoulders at her blunt, but true statement. That's why I don't understand why you'd hang out with him, someone who lacks confidence like him. It doesn't make any sense, she stated as if it were a matter of fact, much to my dismay. You see, you should know. Her manners had taken a complete turnaround, much to our increased confusion. I love you more than life itself. Mocha. She then pounced towards my silver-haired friend, much to my complete shock. Mocha was too confused and surprised to do much of anything, so Sendo had managed to land on her target. This is gonna end in disaster, I just know it. What do you think you're doing? This is hardly the proper code of conduct during school. Tenya had started his lecturing with his robotic arm movements. But it was ignored by those two, much to my friend's dismay. She hadn't fallen over, so the young girl had managed to land in a one-sided hug. And just what do you think you're doing? Mocha didn't seem mad, but knowing her these past few days told me otherwise. I just see how confident you are, and after seeing you up close, I've decided that you're the one. She was acting so different from before, it was insane. And what exactly do you mean by that? She had finally managed to pry the little brunette from her, and was now comically holding her by the cape. How Sendo's smile didn't leave her. Well duh, I want you to be my girlfriend. Mocha's face seemed to have morphed to one of comical horror at the thought. Why you're, GGGG. I couldn't even finish my statement, in favor of covering my embarrassed face over the whole matter. Yeah, no, I'm not into that kind of thing, and I don't really swing that way, she stated with a comical sweat drop on the side of her head, while letting go of the cape holding the fangirl. Oh, come on, what's that saying again? You never know unless you try it. the little girl, not swayed in the slightest, had said, but her statement had just made me feel even more embarrassed about the whole situation. Well, I'm not willing to try it. Control yourself. Saying such things is not appropriate for school, and I absolutely cannot condone the actions of said event, Tenya had said while trying to defuse the situation. Later in the hallways, she was still at it, trying to get Mocha to change her mind, and each attempt even worse than the last. Hey, don't you think that you should stop? I gained enough of my bearings and asked her as best as I could, but that was difficult when you're trying not to think about the things Miss Sendo was implying to Mocha. I'm surprised you managed to speak at all. You may have good grades and a moderate amount of strength. Your lack of confidence demeans any hope of you having a relationship. That last part confused me enough to the point where I had snapped out of my stupor. Wait, relationship? What are you talking, Abio? Now you listen, and you listen good. I don't want my darling Mocha being sullied by the likes of a creep like you. She very rudely interrupted my question, by confusing me even more. Don't call me your darling Mocha. So, I'm declaring war on you. She ignored Mocha's blunt rejection again, and pointed her wand at me, surprising me with her sudden boldness. Magic wand, brooms and buckets. Magic wand, brooms and buckets. Abracadabra, she chanted, and her wand glowed a bright pink, and suddenly the utility locker was shaking violently, then suddenly burst open with cleaning supplies that started racing towards me. Hua. I didn't have much time to react, added with the fact I had stumbled over myself, so I did the only thing I could do. I covered my face as best as I could, and braced myself for the incoming impact. Tashinori Yagi. I was walking down the halls to get to the next class. And as I was heading towards the corner, I began to think about all that had happened since young Midoriya and I had arrived here. Ever since we've arrived here, it's been one surprise after another. Unfortunately, I couldn't tell young Lita about my true form, but he did know that I was here. I still can't believe it's only been almost a week. It feels like we've been here for a lot longer. I thought back to Shizuka's sudden proposal, which brought a bright blush to my face. Geez, I don't even know where that came from. I couldn't say that the thought wasn't appealing, but I haven't had time to just take the time to slow down and have a date. This would actually be my first one, even if it was still on the school premises. As I turned the corner, I heard a small commotion, so I looked up, getting out of my short bout of nervousness. I saw young Midoriya getting comically beaten by brooms and buckets, along with a little girl dressed as a witch laughing at him, and young Akashiya standing there with a deadpan expression. I stared for a moment before turning on my heel and deciding to take the long way around. Sorry, young man, but I just have a feeling it isn't my place to interfere, I thought while rubbing the back of my neck comically as I made my regretful decision. Izuku Midoriya. As I was being assaulted by the cleaning supplies, I began to ponder on Sendo's abilities. This must be, related to what she is, gay, and based on what she's wearing, she must be using telekinesis, or a magic of some kind. I tried my best to guess what she was, but it was rather difficult when you're being battered by inanimate objects. Haha, I'm using magic, if you're wondering. See, I'm a witch, so it's sort of my thing. My eyes widened at that. Those guys called her the same thing. And if anyone tries to get close to me and my Mocha, stop calling me yours. Then they're gonna have to answer to me and my magic wand here. She completely disregarded Mocha's statement. Eavesdropping. Did you guys hear that? This girl is way out of control. Revealing your monster identity is definitely against school rules. Well, looks like you've pushed your luck a little too far this time. Infirmary. Izuku Midoriya. Right now I was sitting on one of the beds, trying not to get too embarrassed since Kuruma was sitting right next to me, tending to the small scratches I had gained from my earlier bout. Kuruma Kurono. I rushed towards the author. Hey, what's the big idea, huh? Here we are in the very next chapter, right after my big debut, and you couldn't get around to me any sooner than this. I rushed back to sit down on the bed next to my dear Izuku. Ahem, sorry about that, I told him, and for a second he seemed confused before reverting back to his previous state. And then no, really, it's not that big of a deal. I just loved it when he was embarrassed about something. His reactions are so adorable. Aside from the fact that Sendo won't let me talk to Mocha at the moment. He rubbed the back of his head in his usual nervous manner. Meanwhile I silently cheered to myself in excitement. Yahoo! That means it's just the both of us now. Way to go, Yukari. I got on the bed facing him on all fours. Izuku Midoriya. Well, as far as that girl's concerned, I've heard a few things. I heard Kuruma state. Really? What Abioyuwa? I was going to ask her, but she was now extremely close. Too close. So close that I had to back up to the wall, where I then comically tried to cover my face with my hands. Supposedly she's some kind of genius, but she's childish and bratty, and everyone who's in her class hates her guts. At her last statement, even though she was slowly crawling her way towards me, my eyes widened. That's exactly how I was treated. I looked down in remembrance. I knew how it felt to be isolated, picked on by everyone just because you were different. I guess since she's a witch, she must be sort of like a half-human. Yukari Sendo. I was sitting just outside the window that held my main obstacle to my Mocha's heart. Midoriya, my most despised and hated rival, I'm gonna beat you so bad that you'll never be able to walk again. I dogged through my pockets, before finally finding my object of desires. This is my voodoo doll, and it had your name all over it. I pulled out the strand of his hair that I had managed to swipe while he was still being beat up by my earlier attack. Just tuck this strand of Midoriya's HI. I guess I can relate to her. My eyes widened at that, and made me stop my actions. I was treated the same way when I was a kid. I peeked inside the window to see Midoriya with a distant look in his eyes. Everybody either made fun of me or called me a freak. Because I was different, I'm sure that she feels the same way, so I can't be mad at her, because I know how she feels. I was speechless for a few moments before I felt a burning rage. There's absolutely no way that someone like him knows how I feel. Izuku Midoriya. As I was explaining to Kuruma why I couldn't be mad at Sendo, my arm suddenly moved, socking me square in the jaw, knocking me back with a comical shocked expression on my face, rubbing my jaw. Oh, are you alright? Yukari Sendo. There's no way I'll lower my guard just because you say a few words. I made the voodoo doll punch itself a few more times. You don't deserve someone as pretty as Mocha. Might as well get acquainted with Miss Titipai instead. I then made the doll go for a grouping motion. Inner Mocha. Geez, that brat is such a pain in the neck. I thought I'd never shake her off of me. It was starting to get out of hand. If she keeps this up, I'll have to teach her to know her place. She needs to take into priority of the school's policies. I must find her and lecture her about the proper code of conduct. I looked over at Lita in comical exasperation. At the moment I was walking with the no-nonsense Lita towards the infirmary, where Izuku resided. But there was something strange. That same presence I felt when that little witch used her magic could also be felt near the same place Izuku is. Wawea. Tenya Lita? That was Midoriya. I began rushing towards the infirmary. I had gotten to the door and opened it. Midoriya, are you doing alright? I looked up and much to my shock and horror, I saw my friend doing something that I'd never thought I'd be seeing him do. Izuku Midoriya moments before. After I had punched myself a few more times, my body resisted every command I told it, and lunged out my arms Kuruma, and flipped our positions. My eyes were closed but I had felt something soft in my hands. I slowly opened my eyes, and what I saw was too much for my mind to handle. Wawea. I am. I tried to tell her that I wasn't in control of my arms, but my words refused to come out right. I tried my best to look away and cover my eyes, but my arms wouldn't budge. Midoriya, what do you think you're doing? And much to my increased horror, my friend Tenya had seen what my body did, and to make matter worse I caught a glimpse of silver behind him. Wait. It's not. I tried to make come out but they refused me yet again. Kuruma seemed to see Mocha as well, and tried to get up, but for some reason, why are my arms still attached? Yukari Sendo. And yoink. Izuku Midoriya. I felt my arms finally move, but in doing so I found myself on the floor, and something in my grasp. Tenya Lita? I was shocked to the core. My jaw was dropped as Midoriya had just committed yet another act I'd never once think him capable of doing. Inner Mocha. My eyes widened. I didn't think he was capable of doing such an act. Kuruma Kurono. I suddenly felt an absence of something from underneath, and a sudden draft made itself known. Izuku Midoriya. I opened my eyes and looked at what was in my hands. What is? Then suddenly, a horrified realization made itself known. Please don't tell me. I noticed that it was attached to a pair of legs. Wawewa. Midoriya. How could you, on school grounds no less? Tenya was the first to come out of his shock. He was misunderstanding the situation, but how couldn't he? Kuruma seemed to move to the side, shock written on her face, and the entire situation painted in my head, made me do the only thing my mind would let me. Inner Mocha. Izuku had fainted. It wasn't like I didn't see it coming, but it was just something I was unprepared for. I did it. I looked over to the window to see that little witch laughing in amusement. Yukari. She tried ducking back down but everyone could see her hat now. Enough was enough, it was time to end this. Tashinori Yagi. I was just on my way to the next class, thinking about what young Midoriya was getting himself into, and the clue that involves the villains. Their activity had been on the down low, so there wasn't really all that much information to go about. I should start training young Midoriya and young Lita too. Who knows what those villains will try to throw at us once they figure out we're investigating them. As I was rounding the corner, I saw young Midoriya being carried by young Akashiya, who was being followed by young Kurono, who was dragging that little kid with them, and following behind all of them was young Lita. I watched them enter an empty classroom with exasperation. So I did what any responsible person would do. I turned on my heel and decided to go the long way around, comically rubbing my neck in slight regret. Sorry, young Midoriya, but I have a feeling that this is a personal matter. And with that I hurriedly made my getaway, not sparing a second glance. Izuku Midoriya. When I woke up I found that I was now inside an empty classroom. I noticed that Sendo was in here too, along with all my other friends in this school. Sendo looked a little nervous. We cannot allow her to continue doing these demeaning acts. It goes against everything this school stands for, and I cannot accept it, Tenyaha stated with his comical robotic movements. Well, she's not really bothering me that much. Kuruma's statement made me cover my face out of embarrassment, and it didn't help that she was blushing about it. Of course you enjoyed it, but I doubt that Izuku would ever do that knowingly, and having his body controlled again. I'm pretty sure he didn't appreciate that. I looked towards Mocha. She didn't seem happy at all. She actually looked to be enraged. I for one think she needs to learn her lesson. My eyes widened at what she was suggesting. I believe you're right. She needs to learn that she can't be doing these things to other people. I looked at Tenya in shock. I thought that he would have been more considering. I decided to act. I placed myself in front of Sendo. You guys are making this a bigger deal than it has to be. I thought that if I told them it was fine that they would just calm down. Really, you don't have to go to such extremes. Besides, she's only a kid. Midoriya, you do realize what she made you do, don't you? Tenya asked me in a surprised tone. And besides, that's no excuse. She needs to learn her place, and I'll gladly teach her. The way Mocha said that gave me the chills. Now listen, as a fellow student you shouldn't be doing such atrocious acts, otherwise you just might end up alone, with no compatriots there to support you. Tenya went on into his lecture mode. Who cares? I'm a genius, okay? If others aren't at my level, then why should I waste my time being friends with them anyway? At Sendo's statement my eyes widened in remembrance. That's the same way Kachan acted when we were kids, but besides, I looked back at Sendo and saw a sad smile forming on her face. What's the big deal? I've been alone from the very start. Sendo. I began to remember how I used to feel like that, until 3 big buckets landed on top of my head. Ha ha ha, old man, you totally fell for that one. And with that Sendo ran out of the room, still laughing in amusement. Why you? How dare you injure Midoriya further? Tenya tried to tell the fleeing girl comically. Hey, it's alright, I am just fine. I tried calming him down by reassuring him of my well-being. Midoriya, you can't still be trying to protect her, after all that she's put you through. He tried to make me see some kind of sense. Well, I can understand what she's going through. I know how she feels, and I have to make it right. I told them, not giving them enough time to respond, as I had chosen to chase after Sendo. Yukari Sendo. I was running through the hall still laughing at my latest prank, but as I was doing so, small phrases that my peers said about me began coming to mind. You know, I heard that girl's a witch. What a pathetic loser. How did we get stuck with a girl like that in our class? And all that childish talk. I mean, really, who does she think she is? Yeah, well, it's not like she can help it. She is a witch after all. I kept running, still laughing. A snot-nosed brat like her is nothing more than a nuisance. The more I laughed, the more faded it seemed to be compared to my thoughts. Besides, witches are closer to humans than they are to monsters anyway. My eyes hagen to sting. There's no reason for her to even be in this school. I know, right? The only reason she makes good grades is because she uses magic. I don't know when it happened, but I stopped laughing, and I stopped. Who needs friends? I don't care. I was rudely brought out of my thoughts by someone bumping into me, causing me to fall on my behind. Aha, ow, that hurt you, moron. Why don't you watch where you're going, you jerk? I yelled, flailing my arm about. Well, I suppose that compared to you, almost anyone could be considered a Mormon, couldn't they? I looked up at the menacing voice. Class president. I had no clue what he's doing here, and his lackeys too. Well, if it isn't Little Miss Rule Breaker. You've gone and made our president angry. Well, none of that has anything to do with you guys, so leave me alone, I stated while angrily waving my arms around. Oh, but it does. The leader then roughly grabbed my wrist and held me up. You see, whenever a student does something to disrupt class discipline, it's our responsibility to teach them a lesson. I looked up in shock and nervousness. Inner Mocha. I was just baffled. Why would Izuku go to such lengths to defend that little witch? It just doesn't make any sense. Well, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised by this. I looked over at Lita. Did he know something about this? Alright, explain. I commanded him to tell me. Midoriya has always been like this, choosing to see the better parts in others, and worrying about the well-being of others than his own, he stated as if it were a matter of fact, while pushing his glasses up. But didn't she say that she didn't care if she was well-liked? The succubus had decided to put her 2 cents on the matter in. Well, no matter who it is, or what they said, Midoriya is an aspiring hero. That's right, I had almost forgotten. And heroes are always butting in, even when it isn't any of their business. At least, that's how Midoriya views it. For some reason Lita had looked down at his hand in remembrance, before a smile formed on his face. Those are just some of his redeeming qualities, and I can't abandon him, he stated before rushing off for Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. Sendo, I know just how you feel, and I won't let you isolate yourself. I will save you. With that I activated full calling, and zoomed to find Sendo. Yukari Sendo. I don't know where these guys had taken me, but I didn't like it. Just the scenery sent chills down my spine. The fog was so dense. They then roughly threw me into the trunk of a tree. Ah, hey, what's your problem? That hurts. It hurts. Why don't you go and cry about it? Your voice is so disgusting. Yep, disgusting is exactly right, the leader stated with his hand on top of his head in an overly dramatic way. It make me sick. They all then started to transform into their monster forms, much to my shock. And it didn't help that all I could see was their silhouettes as they had grown tails and their faces started protruding. The fog slightly lifted, but what it revealed didn't give me the slightest modicum of comfort. Those 3 now had green scaly skin, and yellow slotted eyes with claws at the ends of their hands, and their tails were swaying from side to side. They were lizard men. I readied my magic wand in defense. You're nothing but a disgusting, snot-nosed, shrimp-ass, punk bitch. Something like you doesn't belong here. My eyes widened at his hurtful statement, making me remember more hurtful words. I wish we didn't have her in our class. What's her deal, that dirty witch, acting like she's hot shit just cause she's good at school and everything? Why do they even let stupid little brats like her come to school here? I know, right? It's like you're a total pain in the ass. Why don't you just get out? I remembered how I used my magic wand to make their skirts fall down. Ah. Hey, what happened? This is so embarrassing. Ahaha, well that ought to teach you. I had then started to run. Hey, it's that witch. The trio tried to chase me but had tripped over each other. That was mean. This is why everybody hates you, you dirty witch. I don't even want to be like stupid girls like you, so there. I had tears prickling the edges of my eyes, but I hid it by sticking my tongue out and pulling down my eyelid. What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? I looked back up, realization dawning on me. I needed to get out of here. Magic wand attack. Magic wand attack. Magic wand attack. Magic wand. Oh, shut you damn mouth. One of them had bitten down on my wand. My eyes widened in shock before he then crushed it within his jaws. He then kept chewing on it. But I just looked at my now broken wand. Oh no, he ate my magic wand. Gross. I've never tasted anything so gross in my life. So what should we do with this one? I say we eat her. There's plenty of fog around. There's no way anyone would notice. My eyes widened in horror at what they were planning. Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. His mouth opened to reveal his reptilian-like tongue. She's a prepubescent little runt, but at least she'll take that wand taste out of my mouth. I was frozen in terror. My feet wouldn't move. No, please, someone help me. Smosh. Recipro burst. Moments earlier, Izuku Midoriya. I found myself in a dense part of fog in the woods. I was searching for Sendo, hopefully to make her understand that she doesn't have to be alone. Midoriya. I looked over towards the voice in surprise. Tenya, what are you doing out here? He was running towards me, and his pants were rolled up to reveal his corks exhaust pipes. I could be asking you the same, but I already have a feeling that it has something to do with that young girl, doesn't it? My eyes hardened at that. Say what you will about her, but you won't stop me. I have to help her. I turned back to face forward. Actually, I came out here to help. I looked back at him in surprise. Of course I realized that no matter who it is, you try and find the best in others, and there's almost nothing that can stop you. I began to smile at his statement. This was the Tenya that I knew, Of course we'll have to teach her about the proper code of conduct. The moment was ruined, of course. This was also the Tenya that I knew. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go. I was about to rush into the fog, but was stopped by an unexpected grip from my friend. That's all well and good, but I believe I heard a bit of commotion back this way, he stated, turning my body in the direction he was talking about. I believe we should start over that way, before we start searching elsewhere. I began to scratch the back of my neck, while laughing nervously. Why yeah, you're probably right. I then activated full cowling again, and darted off with Tenya by my side. As we headed further and further into the fog, I began to notice 4 figures in the fog. I didn't like the looks of this. It looked like 3 of them were surrounding the 4th, so I upped the pace. Someone, help me! My eyes widened and my body darted even faster. I went to hit all 3 of them. Smosh! I missed the one on the far left. Recipro burst. I looked over, and thankfully Tenya had gotten the one I missed. What the? I had sent the 2 that I had caught with my fist, and sent them flying away, and Tenya did the same with the one he had gotten with his kick. I then rushed over to the person in trouble, and to my surprise, it was Sendo. Hey, are you alright? I went to offer her my hand, but she just slapped it away, causing my eyes to widen. I'm fine, but why are you even here? As far as monsters go, these guys are jokes. I can handle myself just fine. This time it was Tenya who stepped in. You shouldn't push other away, whether you think you can handle it on your own or not. I looked over at him in shock. He had a grim look of regret on his face. It isn't just about you. Think about the people who care for you. Think about how your actions will make them feel. I know that Tenya was speaking from personal experience, but it seemed that Sendo wasn't listening. Oh yeah, and just who would care what a witch like me would do anyway? I looked at her in understanding. At one point I felt the same as she did. I know how you feel. Everybody calls you a freak because you're different. Her eyes widened in shock, and they all pick on you. You feel isolated. I looked at her with a small, genuine smile. And we can't change that about us, because that's how we were born. I then gave her my biggest grin, almost as joyous as All Might's grin. You know, I've wanted to be a hero for so long, it's my dream. Her eyes portrayed her shock, but everyone around me told me that was impossible. I didn't have any friends, and those that I did abandoned me. Memories of how Ka-chan pushed me away when it was made aware that I was quirkless. But I didn't listen to any of them, because it was my dream. I know this might sound a little ridiculous, but it's true. Don't let others tell you what you're worth, and don't let them tell you what you can or can't do. I then gained a proud smile on my face. I decided to quote my idol. Someone I look up to once said, "You too can become a hero." I know you're really just looking for that one person to accept you, and I'd be more than happy to be your friend Sendo. I finished with a smile on my face, but I didn't expect her to lunge at me and wrap her arms around me. I could hear her sobbing. I just smiled and patted her on the head in a comforting manner. Tenya Lida? I looked at Midoriya with a small smile on my face. He really does seek the good in everybody, and he succeeds more often than not. If he can change someone like Todoroki, then I had no doubts that he would be able to pull this off. Yukari Sendo. I didn't think that anyone would feel the same way I did, but this guy, at first glance he doesn't seem all that special. He didn't seem to have much confidence in himself. He always stuttered, but he was the only one there to protect me. Even his whole demeanor changed. His eyes were set with an unyielding sense of determination. I only looked up to Mocha because she was always confident, and never flinched at anything. But Izuku was more like me. He was shunned by everyone most of his life, and he knew so much more about me than I realized. Izuku Midoriya. Thanks, Izuku. I knew what she was talking about, and my smile brightened. It's alright. Hey, what gives? Did you guys just forget about us? What are we, chopped liver? The moment was brought down by the danger we're facing. I can't believe I forgot about them. I turned to look back at our opponents, only to see one of them lunging towards us. Tenya used his Recipro, so he has to wait for his quirk to cool down, and full cowling takes a moment to activate. I tried to think of a way out of this, but was interrupted by Sendo. No, she had lunged at the attacker and comically bit down on his tail. My eyes widened. One for all, full cowling. The red veins appeared for an instant, before bursting into the iconic green electricity. Gah, what the hell do you think you're doing, you miserable little brat? Before he could swipe at her, I lunged forward, and snatched Sendo out of the way before harm could come to her. I wrapped my arms around her protectively, before flipping and skidding across the ground. I then placed Sendo behind me and prepared myself for a fight. Don't worry, Sendo. I'll protect you. Just stay behind me. I then felt a sharp pain in my back. But you're injured, yeah. I guess that he must have nicked me before I was out of range. But despite all of that, I managed to put on a smile to try and reassure her. I'm fine, I will save you, no matter what. I set my legs so that I had a good amount of balance. I can already feel lightheaded from the blood loss. Geez, I've had enough of this. For the past few minutes it's been nothing but sappy hero and melodramatic talk, the one with the red mohawk had stated, shrugging his shoulders. It's high time we take care of these wimps. The other two started rushing forward. Class president, you take care of the other guy. They were only a few feet away. I wouldn't let them hurt my friends. I began to feel dizzy, but I grit my teeth and prepared for their incoming attack. Midoriya, look out! Before they reached us I grabbed Sendo and turned my back, closing my eyes preparing for the impact, but instead I felt myself getting lifted by the back of my collar. I slowly opened my eyes and looked down. We were in the air. Izuku, are you okay? I looked up and saw Kurumu, much to my relief and surprise. Man, you guys are heavy, she stated before gently setting us down. Wow, thanks for that, Kurumu. If you hadn't shown up when you did. Before I could finish my sentence, Kuruma hugged me while still floating, much to my embarrassment. I did it for you, you know, she stated, snuggling into my shoulder further, only for me to look away while trying to cover my tomato-colored face. Geez, are you kidding me? Another do-gooder. I looked back towards the three lizard men, Tenya already by our side. This is getting annoying. What do you say we eat every last one of them? My features hardened at that last declaration. I won't let you hurt my friends. Oh, Izuku, will you protect me too, pretty please? I heard Kuruma comment beside me, but I was too focused to know what she said. I was about to activate full cowling, but the amount of blood I had lost told my body otherwise, as I had stumbled over before catching myself. Midoriya, are you alright? Tenya had caught me by the chest, before I could fall over. It's time, boys. Let's dig in. Dinner is served. Before any of them could reach us, an oppressive weight had made itself known, and the area had dimmed to a darker red. Get back, you miserable scum. Yukari Sendo. I looked over and saw Mocha had just appeared. Is this the power of a vampire? My legs were trembling at the sheer presence of her power. Izuku Midoriya. I knew that the atmosphere was tense, but all I could feel was relief that someone else had arrived to help. Guys, look, the girl's skirt is way too short for this school's. That's a clear violation. I couldn't help the comical sweat drop that formed on my head. Before anyone could react, Mocha had seemingly vanished, and had already knocked two of them out, and had vanished into a blue yet again. She knocked them out that easily. I can't even see her. What the hell even is she? I could tell just from his tone that he was shocked at the display of Mocha's power. You're not even worth my time. The only way you can hold some amount of power is by ganging up on the weak. She had reappeared behind the leader with a bored look on her face. He had leapt backwards away from her. Having such strength, he comically pulled out the student handbook and flipped through them. Is against our school's rules. He tried lunging out at her with his mouth wide open, but she simply landed a kick that shattered his teeth with a small shockwave. Know your place. And with that the leader was sent skidding across the ground, before he met the water, which he then continued to skip across like a pebble before he crashed into an empty wooden raft sitting in the middle. Yukari Sendo. She has overwhelming strength and speed, and the entire atmosphere changes when she unleashes her true power. Do all vampires have this kind of strength, or is it just her? If that's the case, then I looked towards Izuku in bewilderment. How had he not taken a breath yet? I just looked down at the ground with guilt. Why? Taki, huh, what do you mean? My eyes were shadowed by my hair. I was so bad, and did such mean things to everybody. I don't get it. Why did you guys come and save me? I gripped my broken wand tighter. Huh, didn't you hear what I said? I looked back up towards Izuku, only to see a smile on his face. You don't have to be alone. We'll look after you from now on, and I promise I'll be there to protect you. I looked at him in awe and shock. I looked at Mocha. She was looking away from everyone with a neutral expression on her face. I looked back at everyone to see that they had genuine smiles on their faces, but Izuku's was the brightest of them all. I felt tears begin to fall from my eyes. I pounced Izuku and enveloped him with a tight hug, as if he could disappear from my arms. Izuku Midoriya. I grimaced in pain as she wrapped her arms around me, but the look in her eyes made it all worth the pain. I hugged her back with my arm that wasn't being supported by Tenya. And as I returned the gesture, I heard her start crying into my stomach. My expression softened. I will keep my promise to her, no matter what. Inner Mocha, a few days later. I was walking down with the succubus next to me, carrying boxes filled with school supplies. You know, about Yukari, I heard that after that incident, she completely cleaned up her act after that. I half listened to her explanation. She even got up in front of her whole class and apologized for the mean trick she pulled. I felt my eyes beginning to feel tired. Everyone began to feel guilty for saying those hurtful things about her. I began to yawn in boredom, and little by little they started to open up to her. Yawn, yeah, very interesting, I commented offhandedly. She seemed to gain a few comical tick marks at that. Hey, were you even listening to what I said? Apparently not. I don't have time for such trivial matters such as that. Whatever she does has nothing to do with me. I stated it in a matter-of-fact tone. Well, yeah, but aren't you at least happy for her? I looked at her in a deadpan expression. She sighed in exasperation. Geez, I guess not. As she was saying this, we had neared the class with the supplies we needed to drop off. With that out of the way, I then began to open the door, thinking about how Izuku was doing. He's been rather busy, and I haven't seen him or Tenya after school that much, and when I did see them, they were exhausted. Something's going on, and they aren't telling us what. With that thought, I went inside the classroom, and what greeted me was a comical sight. Izuku Midoriya. Oh Izuku, you're just so amazing. I looked down at Sendo, who had her arms wrapped around my waist, and her head snuggling in my stomach. I didn't know what to do in this situation. I didn't even know what I said to make her act like this. All I said was, I kind of see you as the little sibling, I guess. After that she suddenly just pounced me. In some ways Sendo was just like me, and in others, I looked at the way she was acting right now, she was completely different. I heard the door creak open and saw both Mocha and Kurumu. Oh hey guys, our classes are right next to each other, and I figured I should come over and play sometime. Now Kurumu had a confused expression, while Mocha had an amused glint in her eyes. Oh hey guys, how's it going? I asked them, not entirely sure how to explain this situation. Now I wonder what you did to get yourself into this predicament, Mocha stated with a high amount of humor in her tone. Well, all I said was I saw her as a little sibling. I didn't really think much of it, but it seemed to have made both Kurumu and Mocha react differently than I thought they would. Ooh, well if you see her as a sister, then what do you view me as? Kurumu had grabbed my arm, and to my surprise at her sudden outburst, she started rubbing herself on me. I tried to cover my face with arm only to find that Sendo had grabbed my other arm. No, I won't let a hussy like you corrupt my big brother. My eyes widened comically in shock and embarrassment at the sudden twist of events. What do you think you're all doing to Midoriya? This is hardly within the school's regulations. And there's my good friend Tenya, with his usual comical robotic arm movements, in his lecture mode. Mocha didn't say anything. Instead, she had lunged at me, wrapping her arms around me, and before I could react, she had brought her face towards my neck. The next thing I feel is a lightheaded sensation. Oh Make, where did that cup come from? Said after Shizuka had declared her date with Yagi, All Might. Inner Mocha. At the moment I was sitting at a table in the cafeteria, sipping from a mug that I had recently filled with crimson liquid. Hey Mocha. I looked over and saw Izuku heading towards me. Yes, what is it? Where did you get that cup? Well, not the cup but what's inside. I looked at him quizzically before taking another sip, looking away from him. From a special place, I muttered in the mug. Tashinori Yagi. I had gotten a bottle of spray cleaner, and some old rags to clean up the blood I had spit out earlier due to Shizuka's sudden proposal. When I had arrived back at my little mess, I noticed it was all gone. I scratched the back of my neck. That's weird. I don't recall cleaning it up before. Inner Mocha. Yes, a very special place indeed. I had finished telling him, before walking off, hoping he wouldn't prove the issue any further. That's it guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. With that, take care.